Good morning, everyone. I'm Doug Aguilera, the chair of the Committee on Professional Conduct, and welcome. The CBA has provided the opportunity for the public to participate via the WebEx platform. When we take public comments, we will begin by taking public comment from those individuals attending the meeting at the Sacramento location. I will then ask the moderator to open up the lines for public comment. You will be allotted up to 5 minutes for public comment. I'll now turn the meeting over to Ms. Reed to establish a quorum.
Doug Aguilera, Nancy Corrigan,
Nancy Corrigan, present.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Present.
Christian Lotta,
Present.
Tony Lynn,
Here.
Yen Tu,
Present.
and Evangeline Ward.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. The CBA, I'll now read the mission statement into the record. The CBA's mission is to protect consumers by ensuring only qualified licensees practice public accountancy in accordance with established professional standards. This mission is derived from the statutory requirement that protection of the public shall be the highest priority for the California Board of Accountancy in exercising its licensing, regulatory, and disciplinary functions. Whenever the protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. The next item on our agenda is to see if there are any public comments for items not on the agenda. Are there any public comments for items not on the agenda here in Sacramento? Moderator, will you please open up the lines to see if there are any public comments for items not on the agenda?
Thank you. I will be asking, although at this time there are no members of the public logged into the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
The next item on our agenda is to approve the minutes of the November 22nd, 2024 Committee on Professional Conduct. Can I get a motion to accept those minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. Ms. Tu is the first, and Ms. Hines, you are second.
That's fine. I can be reversed.
Or vice versa.
Chair, it's a clarifying question just of council. I can vote on the accepting the minutes even though I wasn't present at the meeting, right?
You can. At times there's guidance from the department that individuals should abstain in those situations, but you're entitled to vote as a board member.
If I reviewed the minutes, then I can vote to accept them.
Right, great. You bet.
Well, I'll take whichever first or second.
Yes, it's fine. A lot of power. Are there any questions or comments from anyone here in Sacramento? Moderator, are there any attendees, virtual attendees?
No, there are not.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Reed, I will turn it back over to you.
Doug Aguilera,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines, Christian Lotta,
Yes.
Tony Lynn,
Yes.
Yen Tu,
Yes.
and Evangeline Ward.
Yes.
And the motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. The next item on our agenda is discussion and possible action on open mobility requirements. And Ms. Center, thank you for being here. Thanks for all your hard work.
Thank you. The purpose of this agenda item is to provide the board with an opportunity to provide direction and feedback to staff on open mobility requirements that will inform future regulatory changes if the board-approved mobility legislative proposal becomes law. At its September 2024 meeting, the CBA reviewed and approved a mobility legislative proposal that would amend Business and Professions Code Article 2 and Article 5.1. The mobility legislative proposal aligns with the CBA's direction on open mobility, allowing any CPA whose principal place of business is outside California and whose license is current and active to practice public accountancy in California without giving notice and without a determination of substantial equivalent licensure requirements. Under the proposed framework, the CBA retains authority to regulate, monitor, and enforce compliance, ensuring out-of-state CPAs meet California's rigorous standards. This active oversight builds public trust while fostering innovation and flexibility. It is important to note that no notice mobility currently exists in California, but the legislative proposal strengthens the CBA's ability to remove a state from no notice mobility if it determines that allowing individuals from that state to practice in California violates the board's public protection duty. Moving to an open mobility framework will end the reliance on the substantial equivalency of other states' licensure requirements and instead focus on the elements of consumer protection upheld by state boards of accountancy. This will allow other state boards of accountancy to explore alternate licensing pathways without compromising consumer safety or access. The CBA currently recognizes other states as being substantially equivalent in California Code of Regulations, Section 5.5. Draft amendments to this section are presented in Attachments 3 and 4, and they would repeal that regulation section 5.5. In the event that the board determines a state should be removed from no notice mobility to preserve public protection, individuals with principal places of business in that state still have avenues towards mobility in California. They would need to submit a notification form to the CBA prior to exercising their practice privilege in California. This form, referred to as PP16, is incorporated by reference in California Code of Regulations Section 19. Staff have proposed a draft PP16 as Attachment 5. Updates to this form include options for an individual to indicate how they qualify for practice privilege, either having practiced as a CPA in another state for 4 of the last 10 years, or having passed the CPA exam, a bachelor's degree, and a year of general accounting experience. The CBA is currently seeking a legislator to carry the mobility proposal as a 2025 legislative bill. And if the bill is passed and signed into law, these provisions would take effect on January 1, 2026. If the law is passed, staff anticipate a CBA item for the November 2025 meeting to initiate the rulemaking process for implementation of the new law. Staff recommends the CBA provide staff direction on the proposed policy changes as illustrated in Attachments 3 and 5 and incorporation in a future rulemaking package. That concludes my presentation. I'll turn it back over to the chair, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Ms. Center. Thank you to you and the staff for being so proactive right behind the legislative suggested language. Here you are back with the rules suggested language. Thank you. Are there any comments from the board, from the committee? Mr. Lin?
I do have a question. Thank you. I would like to know how does the CBA determine which particular state should be removed from the list of the state eligible for no notice mobility? What is the criteria or process is used to um, assess whether allowing individual from the specific state to practice in California would violate the board's duty to protect the public.
The process would be action by this board, so it would not be a determination by staff, but instead it would be a determination by this board. The criteria would include things such as maybe a state lowers their licensure requirements to a level that we feel is not protecting consumers. Another example might be that we are aware of a state that isn't taking appropriate action on enforcement matters in their state that makes us concerned that the public would not be protected if we allowed those individuals to practice in our state without notice. And that is outlined in law, just so you know.
Thank you, Ms. Centers. And so a follow-up to your comment there, is there a procedure of continuous follow-up and monitoring and review of other states, or is it as issues come to our attention, or what is that process?
It would be as issues come to our attention. I would say that we are frequently get information about other states' activities to revise their licensure requirements. And so that is something that I anticipate will continue moving forward, particularly as states decide to move away from the 150 requirement, which we are seeing. So we anticipate that we will continue to receive that information. NASBA traditionally has published information on their website that provides information on substantial equivalency of states. I will hope that they continue to provide information related to licensure requirements of states on their website. I also anticipate that our enforcement team, as they are aware of issues that may be happening, if those issues indicate that an individual is from another state and there is reason to believe that that state did not take appropriate action on something they were aware of, that would be another thing that could come to our attention that might have us bring that to the board for consideration.
And a follow-up to that, I would think reporting by the SEC, PCAOB, Department of Labor. I know when I was on NASBA's Enforcement Resources Committee, we started receiving reports, and it seemed that that information is going to flow more freely, where state boards, enforcement departments are kind of notified generally of trends, and that can be watched too. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Lin.
One more question. How would the information to be communicated to both of the to the public and the affected CBA if the state is removed by the CBA? Would that be posted on the website, or how is the communication?
Yes, we would post that information to our website.
Thank you.
Any more comments? Yes, thank you, Ms. Lyle.
Thank you. Ms. Center, in terms of posting to the website, are you saying if the state is one of these states that we've identified, that information will be posted on the website, or how will the candidate or CPA be, I guess, notified that they need to do this additional step?
Yeah, what we would post on our website is the requirement for individuals to complete the PP16 form in order to practice via mobility in California if a determination has been made by this board that requires them to do so.
So they will just be contacted directly by the board if they need to fulfill that requirement?
There is a no notice requirement, so they would have an obligation, which they already have. Individuals have an obligation to understand and know what mobility requirements are in any state that they wish to utilize mobility in. That is an obligation that they currently have. And so it is a reasonable expectation that those individuals would look to our website and determine if there is a requirement by us to provide notice to us.
And just in addition to that, obviously we would be contacting the state. We would be telling NASBA, it'd be communicated with the AICPA and other interested parties to make sure that that information isn't just relied on our website, but NASBA also maintains a CP, or I think it's called CPA mobility website that would, we would anticipate that they put that information on there. We would share it with Cal CPA, we'd share it with the state society that got removed, or that state was removed, so that CPAs are aware of their obligation should they be operating or seeking to exercise a practice privilege in California.
Those same obligations and process are in place today, correct? If a state suddenly had some lesser, you'd do the same thing. If suddenly a state today, under the current rules and regulations, were to not meet our standards of protecting the public here in California, you'd go through the same process that you just described. So
Right.
in a way, it's already in place.
Right. The only addition to what we do right now is the addition of what is number 5 on page 9 of the attachment 1, which is the addition of looking at whether or not their licensure requirements are comparable. We already have the ability to look at discipline history and that type of thing.
You've heard from the board and their comments, and we'll get public comments. Are you looking for us to make any more suggestions, or just to say, keep up the good work? This is the right path.
So there is no required action on this, so it isn't as if the CPC needs to take action. We do want clear guidance, so if you want to do it such as this, if you want to do it, I think our legal counsel at one point in a similar item said you can even ask for a raised hand kind of approach where you could say, is everyone comfortable with providing direction to the staff to move forward consistent with what the item says? And they can say yes. As long as we have a clear direction, this item, there hasn't been any express concern, so it's pretty easy, but the next item is a little more complex. So it really is up to you, Chair, how you wish to provide that direction.
I'd like to ask the board if they have any suggestions as a way for us to get there.
I was just going to chime in and say that Ms. Senator is absolutely correct. Your board likes to take motions on these types of subjects, and if you'd like to do that, I think that's fine. But there are many boards who will just at this stage say, yes, go run with that, because there's really no action happening. There's that needs to be formed in a motion that the board is taking.
Are there any members of the committee that think that Ms. Senator and her team should take a different direction? Thanks. Are there any public comments here in Sacramento?
Jason Fox with the California Society of CPAs. More for the record, I just want to acknowledge the board staff's being proactive in developing the regulations. I think it's important to have this going as we anticipate legislation this year. And I think directionally what the board staff has laid out makes a lot of sense for the mobility piece, and looking forward to working with them as they kind of develop the specific language this year.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. As I understand it, there are no members of the public online. Oh, there is.
This is the moderator.
Can you open up the
Excuse me, my pardon,
lines?
Chair Aguilera. There are members of the public online now. Shall I ask for public comment?
Yes, please.
Thank you. If anyone would like to make a comment, we've opened up the WebEx public comment feature. You can look for the hand icon, typically at the bottom of the WebEx screen. Click that to raise your hand. Requests to comment will be called upon in the order they were received. If you're on a mobile device, that hand icon may be behind the three-dot other options. Each speaker will have 5 minutes with a 30-second warning. Are there any requests for comment? I do not see any requests. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to our next agenda item, Ms. Center. Thank you.
Thank you. The purpose of this agenda item number 4 is to provide the CBA with an opportunity to provide direction and feedback to staff on examination and licensure educational requirements that will inform future regulatory changes if the CBA approved licensing legislative proposal becomes law. At its September and November 2024 meetings, the CBA approved a licensing legislative proposal, which is included as attachment 1 in your materials. The proposal modernizes the educational and experience requirements and is based on extensive stakeholder feedback, suggesting the current licensure requirements are confusing and present barriers for qualified candidates. The CBA is presently seeking an author for the legislative proposal. If the legislative proposal is passed, it will require changes to current policies established via regulations. This item provides you the opportunity to discuss one of those policy changes. Other policy discussions will be brought forth in future meetings and culminate in a regulatory package for board consideration in November. So before we dive into our policy discussion, I want to first draw your attention to attachment 2, which is the timeline for the proposed legislative changes. So let's go through that timeline. The timeline begins with the approval of the licensure and mobility legislative proposals, and then moves to the legislative process. And that process is shown in the burgundy colored box there. The licensure and mobility proposals will most likely be introduced in a single bill. You can see that February 21st is the last day bills can be introduced for this year's legislative cycle. And October 12th is the last day for the governor to sign bills passed by the legislature. That means we will know no later than mid-October if the board-sponsored bill will become a law. If the bill becomes a law with the CBA proposed implementation dates, the open mobility provisions would take effect on January 1, 2026. This is shown in yellow. The new licensure pathway would take effect on July 1, 2026, and that's in green. And the current or legacy licensure pathway would remain a viable option for candidates until December 31, 2028. The short period of time between when the board will know if the bill becomes a law and the implementation of the new pathway on July 1, 2026 is the reason why we are having policy conversations even before the bill is introduced. Okay, now moving on to today's policy discussion, which is about specifying the educational requirements for the accounting concentration. The legislative proposal establishes that the accounting concentration shall include accounting, business, and ethics. These subject areas will be the same for both examination and licensure candidates. There is also a requirement for a bachelor's degree, which is not part of today's discussion. Staff is proposing subject area definitions that are described in attachment 4 and the following minimum unit requirements: 24 units in accounting, 24 units in business, and 3 units in ethics. Current educational requirements are described in your item, and that starts on page 1. To qualify for the exam, applicants must complete 24 units of accounting and 24 units in business. To qualify for licensure, applicants must also complete 20 units of accounting study, 10 units of ethics study, and a total of 150 total units. So, how did we get to our recommendation before you today? Well, we started by looking at how we currently evaluate college transcripts with the goal of creating a more efficient and transparent process that would decrease confusion students might have about which courses qualify, while also ensuring adequate public protection. Currently, staff primarily rely on course titles to determine if they qualify, and they do that by looking for keywords such as auditing, marketing, or architecture. You can find a description of that process in your item starting on page 1. Staff reviewed the Uniform Accountancy Act, or UAA, as well as the UAA model rules, and we did that to search for an improvement over our current process of looking at titles. You can find the model rule 5.2 as attachment 3 in your materials. When we looked at that model rule, we found that an example where it looked at a data analytics course, and we found that to determine whether or not that would qualify, the model rule suggested looking at what college department or program that course was taken in. We found that to be a good model to explore, looking at that model across both accounting and business. So staff reviewed what we currently accept as qualifying courses, and with feedback from a college faculty focus group, drafted accounting concentration subject area definitions for accounting, business, and ethics. And those are shown in attachment 4. If you look at attachment 4, you will find that, for example, all courses taken in a college's accounting department or program would count towards the accounting requirement without having to interpret the course title. Staff would utilize the course code to determine what college department or program a course is taken in. We recognize that not all colleges have an accounting department or program, so the definition would also qualify courses if they cover accounting, auditing, taxation, or financial reporting analysis. Staff believes this approach provides a balance of simplicity and flexibility that will help relieve confusion for CPA exam and licensure candidates about which courses will qualify. With the accounting concentration subject area definitions drafted, we next move to exploring what the minimum unit requirement should be for each of the 3 subject areas. It is important to remember that the rulemaking process requires a justification for the establishment of regulations. Because of this, staff limited its review to options for which they believed a justification could be made. Therefore, staff explored 2 options. Option 1 would require 24 units in accounting and 24 units in business. This option is consistent with the current CPA exam educational requirements and the requirements CBA had prior to the implementation of the 150 unit requirement. Option 2 would require 27 units in accounting and 24 units in business, similar to the model rules. I will note that model rules actually have more specificity than that, but given that specificity isn't in our current CBA requirements, staff limited option 2 to a total of 27 units in accounting and 24 units in business. Both options 1 and 2 include a 3-unit ethics requirement consistent with the model rules that is narrowly focused on ethics subjects which are most relevant to the accounting profession. Due to the need for a justification, the only other option staff considered for a minimum ethics requirement was to continue with the 10-unit requirement. The 10-unit requirement includes content that is less relevant to the accounting profession, such as human resources management and religion, that staff believe would be difficult to argue is aligned with minimum competency for entry-level CPAs. Staff was also concerned that none of the degree programs they reviewed required 10 units in ethics. Therefore, requiring 10 units in ethics would not align with the legislative proposal's goal to eliminate the 5th year of college for certain students so as to increase access to the profession. Given all of this, staff included the 3-unit ethics requirement in both options that were presented to a faculty focus group. The faculty supported option 1, and that is the recommendation that is put before you today. They were favorable of the licensure requirements being closely aligned with what we currently have for the educational requirements to sit for the examination, and felt the educational requirements were sufficient when considering the entirety of the requirements to get licensed, especially the requirement to pass the CPA exam. If one were to just look at the total units in the current educational requirements and compare them with option 1, one would walk away with an assumption that the CBA is lowering its standards. That is why it is important to take into consideration the content of the courses that are being eliminated as qualifying. Once you take into consideration the irrelevancy of the content that is being eliminated, I believe option 1 is substantially the same requirement as we have now. As members discuss minimum unit requirements, it is important to remember licensure requirements must be aligned with what is minimally needed for safe and effective practice of a newly licensed CPA. The CBA is not recommending what unit requirements should be for a bachelor's degree in accounting. Universities have processes for establishing degree programs that go beyond approvals at the individual campus level. While a university may look at the examination and licensure requirements as a baseline for a degree requirement, universities also have other considerations, such as supporting the markets in their geographic location, getting buy-in from the profession, and ensuring their curriculum has structure with courses that build on each other. A discussion of what requirements the CBA may wish to include to have a degree recognized as fully satisfying the educational requirements, as well as what certificates to recognize, will be discussed at a future meeting. In summary, staff recommends the CBA provide staff direction on the proposed accounting concentration subject area definitions as illustrated in attachment 4, and the following minimum unit requirements: 24 units in accounting, 24 units in business, and 3 units in ethics. Last, but certainly not least, I would like to thank Cal CPA and the college faculty that have and continue to support the CBA in its work. Individuals across the accounting profession continue to support the CBA as it looks towards modernizing its licensure requirements, and I greatly appreciate the partnerships that we are forming. And to this point, one of the members of the faculty focus group, who was also a member of this board when the 150 unit requirement was defined, has traveled all the way to be here with us today. So Ruben Davella, a CPA from the University of Southern California. He's in the audience somewhere behind me. He's more than happy to answer questions and to assist me when you ask me questions I don't know the answer to. He also is happy to talk to you about current educational requirements and the impact he has seen as students, as well as his participation in the faculty focus group. So I turn the discussion back over to the chair, and we are happy to answer member questions.
Thank you, Ms. Center. Appreciate the hard work, the thorough analysis, and getting us started on this path. Are there any comments from the board? Yes, Ms. Hines.
I just want to first thank you again for the information that you all have presented, the research that you all have done, your responsiveness to our questions. This is a really complex, process, particularly for someone who is not within the practice. And I have to say that you've really been, instrumental in helping me to understand the significance of the process that we're engaging in. I had a question about the process. Where are we in identifying a legislator to introduce the bill? And then can you talk a little bit about that process? Like, do we have to have all of the details fully fleshed out, or is it something that as we are going through hearings with the bills, we can, discuss? And then another element of that question is to what extent do we as a board have to be prepared to also educate legislators about the impact of this and be involved in like that, legislative process?
Mr. Franzella.
Thank you. I can answer that question now, but if you want to pause that, it's one of the topics on the LC, the legislation and where we kind of stand, and some of the almost everything you asked was something I was going to try to touch on under the LC item, if you're okay waiting for that. Or
to the first and the second about identifying the legislator and then the legislative process. To the third question, though, about to what extent are we prepared, or do we have to be prepared as a board to be engaged in that process to make sure that the legislation gets adopted? That's something I think, I like to hear, Ms. Center and her team talk a little bit about on behalf of her team, like what we would need to expect to do as a board to help move this along.
and I'll be happy to answer that. So as the board, and if something came up in leadership roundtables discussions yesterday, was as part of the legislative process, leadership will need to identify a member or two who can act as representatives for the board should we need to testify or make the rounds at the Capitol or the legislator's office to help educate staff, help educate the legislators themselves, the committee staff who might be working on bills. So once we kind of get through the identifying an author and the bill's introduction, then working with leadership, we'll try to identify a member or two who can serve that role, so that we have a resource to kind of look to. And if there's an education component that needs to come with it, then we'll work with those members to make sure they feel comfortable in supporting the board's position or articulating the board's position when we go to those hearings and meet with legislative staff.
I just can add to that. The reason I asked that question on the record is I think that the CPC needs to present that to the board also, that the significance of moving this kind of legislation is that it is going to require the board's active participation in moving it. It's not like a normal legislative process where we just state a position and then we kind of watch it go along. I think something of this significance is going to require the board beyond just the CPC, to be prepared to really be engaged and proactive on it. And I think that's something we should talk about to the board and when we're making a presentation on this item.
Chair Aguilera, would you mind if I address the last question?
Please.
You had multiple questions, and I did want to just address the one about something to the effect of how much of these details do we have to have worked out, I think was the question, something to that. I will say that staff have have looked towards what is in our current bill language and what is in our proposed bill language. And we've identified this topic of unit requirements to come to you first because that is different. Currently, our bill language has that type of specificity in it, and our proposed bill does not. It allows us to do that in regulations. We identified this as something that, you know, an author may wish to change. They may wish to have more control over the unit requirements. And if that is the case, we wanted to make sure that this topic was brought before the board so that we knew what your thoughts were in case this was something that we heard from our author. So there has been some thought put into the order of these discussions, these policy discussions that we are bringing before you for those types of reasons.
Ms. Center, Ms. Corrigan.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Centers. I do echo what Ms. Hines mentioned and want to thank you and all staff for all the work that goes into this. I fully appreciate and support having the educators, relying on them to do their jobs where we can do our jobs and kind of cut to the chase. Having said that, to what degree will the CBA be kind of following up and monitoring college and universities' accreditation status along the way?
So there is a current requirement that the college itself must be accredited in order for us to accept the degree as well as the unit requirements. That requirement is not changed in our bill proposal, nor does our bill proposal require any other level of accreditation. For example, it does not require that the accounting department or program itself be accredited. That is not something that staff proposed, nor is it in there. So in terms of monitoring accreditation, we do ensure that the college itself is accredited when we review the transcripts that we receive.
A follow-up too, I realize in the past and to date, until something changes, we have relied upon titles of courses largely. And I'm sure that there was a process to delve deeper when the title of a course, when it really we were unsure maybe of what was represented by that class. Would you say, or that course, would you say over time that there have been many challenges like that, or where we've had to disregard something because it didn't meet the standard or the content?
I would not say many, but you are correct that there is a process. We allow individuals to provide us with additional information when they receive their transcripts back from us that indicates what units that we accepted. So if they feel like there was a course that we did not accept, they are able to send us additional information such as the syllabus of the course, those types of things that we can dive deeper into to do a secondary review.
To that point, you've had some discussion about this. It may come across as though the board and the staff are evaluating these courses on their own, but there's a certain level of in the accreditation process and then, accepting subject, matter degrees and what courses qualify to fulfill those degrees. The State Department of Education and, federal departments of education have a role in approving that a certain course title signifies that it contains a certain content in order for the degree to be credentialed. So there is an outside, and I did ask the center to, just provide us at a later date some information about the credentialing, the accreditation process, and about how titles of courses, are determined and what the content matter of a course must be, like a minimum level. There's a process for that. And I did ask Ms. Center to provide us with some of that because I figured that that would be a question that some folks might have. And I also think it's important for us to, make sure that we're communicating that in our, diligence in evaluating this, we're not being arbitrary. We're not just relying upon our own, experience and knowledge. We are, relying upon other, relevant, credible sources that, have more experience and credibility in, making that determination. So.
Thank you again, Ms. Center. I wanted to talk about the definitions. I like these definitions. They're transparent, and I think it's going to relieve some stress from the students. They'll be able to do their own transcript review in this way. So thank you there. And then I think of the 24 units in accounting, 24 units in business, and 3 units in ethics as a floor. In looking at the different colleges that were surveyed and you provided the data, most of the colleges provide or require more than the 24-3. So I see this as a nice floor, a minimum necessary to protect the public. Thank you for your work. I think I would like to get a motion here along the lines. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I have another question.
Yeah.
Sorry. I have a question about the increasing the experience. The increasing the experience from 1 year to 2 years, because we did such a great job of explaining the rationale behind why we were changing the different courses that were acceptable and the number of units and things like that. But we don't have a lot of explanation as to the rationale behind changing from 1 year to 2 years, or substituting the graduate degree for 1 year of that 2-year experience. There's not a lot of connection between what is discussion about the expectation of what is supposed to come out of that experience. And I'm concerned that we've been, so, diligent about explaining why we're changing the subject matter, but we haven't dedicated the same level of diligence towards explaining that increase. And I also am concerned about whether the fact that I didn't see it in this, and I didn't see it in the minutes from the last discussions, but I could have missed it, but a discussion about what impact that could have on potentially, the pipeline issue, whether or not there are obstacles and barriers that students may encounter, with the 2-year experience requirements. So that it was concerning to me that we don't dedicate a similar level of time and explanation to that change and about what the impact of that change may be.
Signs. Ms. Tu?
I don't know if Ms. Center wants to address it, but essentially it's the reason why it's 2 years is because we're reducing the 30 unit that they don't have to take.
I appreciate that and I understand that, but that's such a simplistic explanation, given the fact that we've gone, and I don't mean that at all. I'm not dismissive or disrespectful. I mean, it is a very simplistic explanation. And given the fact that part of the reason that we have been engaging in all of these discussions is because of this, both because of the impact on, the pipeline, and also because we want to be really clear that that there is a rationale and a justification behind all of the requirements that we have. And so to just say, that 1 year of experience is replacing 30 hours, when we were talking about how some of the problems with the 30 hours was because they weren't relevant to helping to ensure that a potential licensee was going to be prepared to practice. Or we weren't talking about how that 30 hours had to have a certain amount of subject matter, there's this change to increasing, and another year of experience is a big deal. you know, and that's a significant, change in imposition. And so, I'm concerned that we're not talking about that part. Mm-hmm.
No, I wasn't. Yes, Ms. Lauda.
Thank you, Chair Aguilera. Ms. Hines, I would say that I think that staff has addressed that thoroughly. I believe it was our September meeting last year. So we do have the rationale and the logic behind those changes on record from prior meetings, but I can see maybe we didn't go into detail in this packet, just maybe in the overview, in the background of as we discuss these issues, it could be carried forward just for reference because the staff has done an excellent job and they have discussed that in detail back on that in that meeting when we did vote on that item.
So to follow up, and I'm bringing this up because there's a recommendation for a motion. And if the recommendation for the motion would be to propose this, I would be uncomfortable with supporting that motion, even though I'm supportive of this overall, without having that information carried forward so that when we're presenting this as what our legislative proposal is, it not only includes an explanation of the change in the subject, degree requirements, but it also talks about the change in the experience requirement as well. So it's an overall presentation to licensees about, potential licensees about the changes.
Chair Aguilar, do you want me to address the comment? So I believe we did provide information, but I understand it wasn't addressed in this item. So we had several conversations and that I can provide you a little bit of information on. One of them was conversations with firms. We had conversations with them about the requirements overall and in terms of making some adjustments and making adjustments to the elimination of 150 and how that might ensure that we also have individuals that meet that minimum requirement. And they agreed that an increase to 2 years of experience would really balance out that and get us to that minimum level. We also had conversations about that with a group that Cal CPA has been really nice to allow us to kind of sit in on and ask them questions. There were quite a few faculty in that group where we had this conversation. They also agreed that while some of the units that we kind of are eliminating really aren't as relevant, there is some maturity that comes with time and comes with that increased unit requirement because it increases time. So having that 2 years of experience, they felt also kind of gets us to not necessarily the content, but the maturity, the working in a work environment that you might see by increasing that requirement to 2 years. We also had conversations with students, and in those conversations, they provided us feedback that allowing them to enter the workforce earlier by increasing that experience requirement, but also getting them there earlier without that 5th year necessarily would be very beneficial to them because of barriers that they see with some employers wanting certain things to be satisfied prior to them starting their experience. So if they were able to indicate to an employer, I've fully met my educational requirements, they find it easier to get started on their experience requirement with firms and having those opportunities. So that's some of the information that I believe we have provided earlier.
I think to add to that, and if you mentioned it and I missed it, I apologize, but I believe that topic was covered in some of the town hall sessions that were for the 8 regions of NASBA, where those topics were discussed as to what the answer to that would be. And of course, those participants weren't just California. That was gaining feedback from others across the various regions. Thank you.
Ms. Ward?
I have a question. Thank you, Ms. Center, for all this information. But my question is regarding the curriculum, and I'm bad with names, but the professor that's here today, I'm just curious, since we watched that the college is accredited, they have accreditation established, but we don't actually have accreditation for their accounting program. But I'm just curious, during the process, I'm thinking my own job, does the department make sure that they're following the guidelines of the board? I'm assuming they do, but that might be a question for the professor. Like when we do our accreditation, we take a look at the board to make sure our classes qualify. Does each college do that, I'm assuming, since the units are different for each college?
So the board does not look towards quality or look towards whether or not any university is satisfying our requirements. In terms of individual colleges and whether or not they look towards or require that they meet the examination and licensure requirements in terms of their unit requirements, that is probably not a requirement at all universities. I would say that it is a consideration, but they are looking more towards the goals that they have established for that particular degree. They have to have learning outcomes and expectations of what they want those individuals to have. And some of them may have as their outcome that individuals from their program meet those educational requirements to sit for the exam, but that isn't really a requirement universally for them to have.
Right, understand, because I know it's not a requirement, but I'm just curious. I would hate for a student to follow the curriculum to graduate, but then still be short to apply. So I'm just curious if the school itself also takes an extra step to make sure that they're following what we are asking as well.
Right. I think that if you look towards the attachment that has the unit requirements, you will see that some of them meet and some of them do not. So that provides you an indication that some of them probably look towards those requirements as being one of their priorities, and some of them maybe didn't. I also want to point out that when looking at that table and looking at what colleges require, it's really easy to misinterpret because colleges make determinations about where to place courses in terms of the department for various reasons. And so some of them may place a course that we think is an accounting course in their economics department or in their business department because they have a legitimate reason to do that. Not do for. It could be because, the faculty that they have in that particular program, maybe they have more faculty, whatever that reason might be. So it's not necessarily apples to apples when you look at how courses are put into those buckets that you see illustrated in that attachment.
Can I just add, Ms. Ward's question though it's related to my earlier comment about bringing to the board, some backup for the fact that in order for certain classes to have certain titles and to be able to qualify for someone to obtain a certain degree, the accreditation sets the floors for, whether or not they meet those requirements. That's not something that the Board of Accountancy should be justifying. We should be able to rely upon those entities that certify that an accounting course means this. A English course of this means that it has this content, blah, 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 and that's how it satisfies those requirements. I don't think it's reasonable for us to expect the Board of Accountancy or our staff to make that determination alone. We should be able to rely upon, educational experts, but we also then have someone here to help us with that.
So things have improved since the time I was on the board, including how to work the microphones as opposed to a button on the side. So appreciate that. My name's Ruben Davila. Worked with Michelle with the Cal CPA board, Cal CPA, to go ahead and kind of bring this initiative and help this process. So to answer some of the questions, you've actually brought up this idea of people that kind of go ahead and assess programs. What ends up happening is what they do is look at, here's a course, and here's what the course is supposed to teach and the learning objectives. That's what accreditation does, is they look to see if it does meet those goals and that progression as they come. So that's a quality control aspect. The big quality control aspect on top of that, I think, is this a successful process, is the actual CPA exam. CPA exam goes deep, and it goes through a variety of different topics to make sure that an education that happens in my class versus a course that's exactly the same name, did they reach this minimum level of competency? I also wanted to talk a little bit about the logic behind the 1 year of experience. It was inextricably linked to changing the education requirements. So way back when it was increased to the extra 30 units, there was this great concern that there was a barrier to entry. The compromise, the political compromise, was to reduce the experience requirement from 2 years to 1 year because the extra 30 units added education, it delayed. So the idea was, well, 2 years worth of experience is pushing it way out. So that got pulled back. So was what was changed back then. The other thing that I think is widely acknowledged is that 2 years worth of experience coincides with the progression of a CPA professional. I just had CPAs come visit my classroom actually yesterday and talk to former students that are in the profession. And at 2 years, that's when they're running jobs. That's when they're in charge of stuff. That's when they take on a larger role. You talk about seasoning, there's that learning process. I would suggest also that NASBA has a proposal that involves 2 years worth of experience, although it's much more bureaucratic as associated with that. So I understand your concerns, but I think most of us, I looked at the board and the composition of the board, were under the requirement of a bachelor's degree and 2 years worth of experience. Most of the board, I think, except 2 members, were under that. So happy to be here to answer those questions. Happy to provide the insight about what changed from the before times. I think what you're doing is really important. I appreciate all the work the staff put in. As when I was on the board, there was remarkable amounts of work done by the board to kind of put the positions forward. What ends up happening, I think, is when the process goes to regulation, that's when things got changed and became confusing. So that's the thing that I think is important for the board to keep an eye on. So appreciate the opportunity. Happy to be here and supporting what the board is doing and supporting all the hard work Michelle has done.
Thank you, Mr. DeBella. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
So it sounds like there's some historical conceptual equivalency between that extra year and the 30 units. I think there's value in the 30 units, but there's even more value in the extra year of experience. That's how I see the trade-off. I think that staff need, this is just one of many stops along the way. And I think that staff needs us to say, yes, we agree with, these are reasonable definitions, subject area definitions, and 2020, 24, 24, and 3 are the reasonable requirements. Ms. Tu?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I would like to make a motion. It's not a big deal, but mostly giving staff direction that you're going in the right direction. And we will continue, we would like to encourage you to continue on and continue to bring back to us as additional information or and so forth, and make sure to address your issue, make sure that you bring forward all the historical discussion that we have in the packages.
Ms. Corrigan?
I will second that as it pertains. Right now, we're dealing with examination and licensure, the educational requirements, that piece of it. That's what we're talking about. And I encourage staff to continue with what they're doing.
Thank you.
Legal counsel, real quick, does staff have what they think they need in the motion? It was a little bit of a speaking motion. But
It was. I'm going
It was a
to,
lovely motion.
I will rephrase what I heard. I believe that the motion provides staff with support for the subject area definitions, as well as the 24, 24, and 3 minimum unit requirements.
Or much more defined. I like your motion, the way you word the motion.
Any comment from the board? Mr. Lynn?
I would like to have for the 2 years experience, do they need to work under the licensee CPA to be able to get the 2 years experience as consideration? Yeah.
So that that is not part of this particular topic. That is in regulations in terms of the definition of a supervisor, that type of thing. So if that is something that the board wants us to bring back, we will. It was not something that we anticipated necessarily having a conversation on, but we will at some point have a conversation on experience, because there are opportunities for us to make changes in that area permissively. That is identified in the legislative proposal to make some enhancements, if you will.
Thank you. One more question is from here, I see the CPA may provide experience credit for the completion of the specific certificate or training program. What do you have any detail of that?
So I know it's really difficult because we're trying to take like mini, small little chunks of the policy conversations. I know that's hard. Everyone wants their chunk to be talked about today. So staff have identified various policy conversations to have, and one of them is specifically related to the certificates. Staff thought it was really important to have the conversation today about the minimum unit requirements before we were able to provide you with recommendations on those certificates. I will say that we have already started actively working on it. I had a focus group with community colleges as well as extension program staff earlier this month. So we will be prepared once we get direction on the minimum unit requirements to come back to a future meeting and have conversations on those certificates.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Lotta?
Thank you, Chair Aguilera. I just want to say I'm in support of the motion on the table, but I did want to just offer a thought for Ms. Hines as she expressed concern about the 1 to 2 years and just wanting more background and understanding as we vote on what's on the agenda today. Just in terms of 1 to 2 experience of my personal experience of being a staff, as a new staff that first year, although you have the foundational accounting knowledge and the minimum competency in terms of becoming a CPA or a CPA candidate and professional in the field, that first year is really to understand and grasp, auditing or taxation and just the real world work and kind of making that link between your education and actually doing the job. And as our faculty representative mentioned, once you get to that 2-year, it's not till you hit that 2-year mark that you really comprehend everything and really understand the process and how your accounting knowledge is connected to the responsibilities of a CPA or CPA candidate. So that second year of experience is actually extremely valuable in terms of being a functioning professional in the field, to where at some points you're leading audits or you're taking more of ownership of a role and not just following direction, but really understanding and being able to drive the direction. So I just want to give some color as to how that second year of experience is really valuable in comparison of maybe not having the 30 units of education, just to assist you with your vote today. Thank you.
Any more committee comments? Are there any public comments here in Sacramento?
Jason Fox with the California Society of CPAs. Again, want to acknowledge the staff for being proactive and having this conversation. Just listening to the conversation, I think it's kind of important to underscore what Ms. Center and I think Mr. Aguilar kind of alluded to this too. I think over the next few months, there's going to be kind of a series of agenda items around the different policy kind of considerations. And so I think that'll give opportunity, and to Ms. Hines' point, of having a good paper trail of a public conversation and make sure that the board is appropriately discussing all of the different components that will help, I think, inform as we move through the legislative process, but also be really prepared as the strong regulatory package to move in very quickly. So I think that for the direction of what's laid out for the education piece, I think the board is directionally going the right way. It makes a lot of sense. They've certainly included Cal CPA and other practitioners and academics in that conversation, and looking forward to kind of continue to build that out and flush it out as we get to language. And then as we have the other policy conversations on experience and process of and whatnot, we're happy to engage that as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Are there any other public comments here in Sacramento? Moderator, can you check to see if there are any comments online?
Certainly. If anyone would like to make a comment on the issue or the motion, you may use the hand icon to raise your hand, and comments will be taken in the order received. Each commenter will have 5 minutes with a 30-second warning. Are there any comments on the motion or the issue? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Reed, I'll turn.
Evangeline Ward,
Yes.
Yin Tu,
Yes.
Tony Lynn,
Yes.
Christian Lotta,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines, Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
and Doug Aguilera. The motion carries.
Thank you very much, Ms. Center. And that is our last agenda item. We're now adjourned.
Good morning. My name is Evangeline Ward. Today, right now, January 23rd, we're meeting for the Legislative Committee meeting. The CBA has provided the opportunity for the public to participate via WebEx platform. When we take public comments, we will begin by taking public comments from those individuals attending the meeting at Sacramento location. I will then ask the moderator to open up the lines for public comment. You will be allotted up to 5 minutes per public comment. I will now turn over to Ms. Reed to establish a quorum.
Patricia Batchelor,
Here.
Nancy Dong,
Present.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Present.
Joseph Rosenbaum,
Here.
and Evangeline Ward.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. The CBA's mission is to protect the consumers by ensuring only qualified licensees practice public accountancy in accordance with established professional standards. The mission is derived from the statutory requirement that protection of the public shall be the highest priority for California Board of Accountancy in exercising its licensing, regulatory, and disciplinary functions. Whenever the protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. We'll start with agenda item number 1, public comments for items not on the agenda. Do you have any public comments here in Sacramento? Moderator, do we have any public comments?
Let me ask one moment. If anyone would like to make a comment on an item that is not on the agenda, we've opened up the WebEx public comment feature. You can look for the hand icon, typically at the bottom of the WebEx screen, and click that to raise your hand. Our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. Requests to comment will be called on in the order they were received. If you're on a mobile device, the hand icon might be behind the 3-dot other options. Each speaker will have 5 minutes with a 30-second warning. Are there any requests for comment? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Agenda item number 2, approve minutes for the July 25th, 2024 Legislative Committee meeting. Does anyone would like to make a motion?
I motion to approve.
I second. Are there any comments or questions from members that are here present? Any comments from the public here in Sacramento? Moderator, please open up the lines for public comment on agenda item number 2.
Thank you. If anyone would like to make a comment on the motion or the minutes from the July Legislative Committee meeting, you can look for the hand icon and click that. That's typically at the bottom of your WebEx screen or behind the 3-dot other options from a mobile device. And our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. Any comments on the minutes? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Ms. Reed, please take a vote for us. Roll.
Patricia Batchelor,
Yes.
Nancy Dong,
Just a quick question. Is it July 25th, 2024? Was there a meeting in November that we should be? No? Okay. Yes, I approve.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines. Yes. Joseph Rosenbaum
Abstain.
and Evangeline Ward,
Yes.
and the motion carries.
Thank you. Agenda item number 3, final actions and outcomes on legislation. The California Board of Accountancy took a position on or monitored in 2024. This is a written report only. Any board comment? Oh, I have someone here. I have my glasses on. Hold on, can't see. Okay. Oh, yes. Mr. Hamfield's here in case we have any questions, or if you have any comments as well.
Yep, it's written report, so it's in there
Okay,
for your.
so written report. Any board comments? Any public comment here in Sacramento? Moderator, can you please open up the comment line for item number 3?
This is the moderator. If you'd like to make a comment on the agenda item 3, the actions and outcomes from legislation from 2024, you may click on the hand icon to raise your hand. Our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. Each speaker will have 5 minutes with a 30-second warning. Any comments on the report? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And just to make sure no vote is needed. Okay, so moving on to agenda item number 4, the overview of the California legislative process and the legislative committee's role. Mr. Hemphill is here to provide that.
All right. Yes. Thank you, Chair Ward. Good morning, members. I am David Hemphill, the Information and Planning Officer with the CBA. The first item, item 4, that I'll be presenting is an overview of the California legislative process and the CBA Legislative Committee's role. This is something we do every January. One of the primary roles of this committee is to review, recommend, and promote legislation related to consumer protection and the practice of public accountancy. This agenda item contains information regarding the processes and procedures that staff follow to ensure effective monitoring of legislation. Many people are involved in these processes to make them work. Staff routinely communicate with the legislature, other DCA entities and staff, and stakeholders, and keeps the CBA informed of these activities. We have provided 3 attachments for your reference. Attachment 1 is the overview of the legislative process, information on exactly how a bill becomes a law in California, and other considerations the CBA may wish to keep in mind as it discusses legislation. Attachment 2 contains the various positions the committee can consider taking on legislation. As the Legislative Committee and CBA review proposed legislation, it may be helpful to refer to these options, and it is included with the materials for each meeting. Attachment 3 is the official legislative calendar that the California Legislature will adhere to in 2025. It lists the deadlines for bill introductions, policy and fiscal committee hearings, and when bills must be heard on the floor of the respective houses. You will notice that this year, the last day for bills to be introduced falls on February 21st. And in the days leading up to that date, which is happening right now, we can expect more than 2,000 bills to be introduced. In the early part of each year, staff is typically very busy identifying bills to keep under observation, recommending the ones most relevant to the CBA, and preparing analyses for your consideration. This will most likely happen at the March and May LC meetings, so these agendas are often larger as staff will be presenting many of these bills. So this was a very brief overview of the process, but I'm happy to answer any questions that members may have. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Any questions from the board members present? Any public comment here in Sacramento? Moderator, can you please open the line for public comment?
We've opened up the public comment features in WebEx. If you'd like to make a comment on the overview, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. Our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. And if you are on a mobile device, you may need to look behind the 3-dot other options to raise your hand. Are there any comments on the overview? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Moving forward to agenda item number 5, update on legislative proposals for enhancements to the CPA licensure requirements and the modernizing mobility. Mr. Franzella.
Thank you, Ms. Ward. Good morning, members. So I wanted to provide a quick update on where we stand right now in terms of trying to secure an author for the legislative proposals related to mobility and the CPA licensure framework. So first, I'd like to extend appreciation to Cal CPA, as well as Pat Joyce and John Ross with KP Public Affairs, who are helped us in trying to make meetings with the various legislators and primarily their legislative staff to start discussing our proposals. We've had a handful of meetings so far. We've also had the opportunity to meet with committee staff, the policy committee staff for both the Assembly and the Senate BMP, where our bill will be heard to make sure that they can understand the board's rationale for the bill or the proposals, as well as being there to answer any questions or at least provide any clarifying information that they're looking for. And I think by the society and the profession, as well as the board, kind of coming together at those meetings, it's showing a fairly united front in terms of both the regulator and the society and the business side of things having a interest in advancing this proposal and modernizing the accounting profession here in California, both from the board's mission of consumer protection, as well as Cal CPA and the accounting profession and advancing the CPA profession. As David had mentioned, the deadline is the 21st for bill introductions, so it's a little less than a month away, and we're continuing to work with legislative staff and authors or legislators to identify an author and continuing to be very active in going down to the Capitol and meeting with potential legislators to author the bill. So at this point, that's the information I have, but as more information becomes available, I'll be sure to share it with members as soon as we get that.
Thank you. Any comments from the members here that are present? Any public comment here in Sacramento? Moderator, can you please open the public line for item number 5?
This is the moderator. If anyone would like to make a comment on item 5, the update, you may look for the hand icon and click that. Our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand, and each speaker will have 5 minutes with a 30-second warning. Any comments on the update on legislative proposals? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Moving on to agenda item number 6, discussion and possible action on legislative proposals for inclusion in the 2025 Senate Committee on Business, Professions, and Economic Development Committee bill. Mr. Hemphill.
Thank you again, Chair Ward. So this item was originally intended for the CBA to approve a non-substantive language change for inclusion in that bill, the 2025 Senate Committee bill. But since we put the item on the agenda, we learned that the Senate Judiciary Committee has handled the non-substantive revisions, and there is now no action needed for this item. So, got off easy. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions your members may have.
Thank you so much. Is there any comments here from the board? Any public comment in Sacramento? Moderator, can you please open the line for agenda item number 6?
Certainly. If anyone would like to make a comment on this item, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. Call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. Any comments on this item? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
And that will conclude our meeting. Adjourned. Thank you.
Welcome to the January 23rd, 2025 Enforcement Program Oversight meeting. The CBA has provided the opportunity for the public to participate via the WebEx platform. When we take public comments, we will begin by taking public comment from those individuals attending the meeting at the Sacramento location. I will then ask the moderator to open up the lines for public comment. You will be allotted up to 3 minutes for public comment. Ms. Reed, please take a quorum.
Doug Aguilera, Nancy Dong,
Present.
Dan Jacobson,
Here.
Tony Lynn, and Joe Rosenbaum.
Here.
We have a quorum.
The CBA's mission is to protect consumers by ensuring only qualified licensees practice public accountancy in accordance with established professional standards. This mission is derived from the statutory requirement that protection of the public shall be the highest priority for the California Board of Accountancy in exercising its licensing, regulatory, and disciplinary functions. Whenever the protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. So moving on to the first item on the agenda, are there any public comments for items not on the agenda? Okay. Moderator, are there any public comments for this item?
This is the moderator. We've opened up the WebEx public comment feature. If you'd like to make a comment for an item that is not on the agenda, you can look for the hand icon, typically at the bottom of the WebEx screen. You can click that to raise your hand. Our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. Requests to comment will be called on in the order they were received. If you are on a mobile device, the hand icon may be behind the 3 other options icon. Each speaker will have 5 minutes with a 30-second warning. Are there any requests for comment on items not already on the agenda? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Item 2 on the agenda is the approval of minutes of the May 16th, 2024 Enforcement Program Oversight Committee meeting. Are there any comments? Is there a motion to approve the minutes of that meeting? Board Member Lynn?
Post, yeah.
Mhm. And is there a second motion?
Second.
Okay. Thank you. Can we take a vote? Sorry. Excuse me. Are there any public comments at the Sacramento location? Okay. Are there any public comments online, moderator?
We opened up the WebEx public comment feature. If you have a comment on the minutes, you may raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, and our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. Are there any comments on the minutes? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Ms. Reed, please take roll.
Doug Aguilera,
Abstain.
Nancy Dong,
Abstain.
Dan Jacobson,
Abstain.
Tony Lynn,
Yes.
and Joseph Rosenbaum,
Abstain.
and the motion carries.
Thank you.
Is that okay? So in the future, members, it's fine to vote on a committee that you didn't sit on prior, as long as you reviewed the minutes ahead of time. And again, you're just accepting those minutes, or you're approving those minutes, but you can vote on ones that you didn't sit on before. We had that kind of overlap sometimes when we moved the committee structure.
Thank you for that clarification. We're moving on now to agenda item number 3, informational overview regarding penalties imposed for disciplinary matters. Ms. O'Connor?
Thank you and good morning. The purpose of this agenda item is to provide members with an overview of how penalties for discipline are determined, including administrative penalties. There's no action needed for this item. It's just an informational overview.
When considering the appropriate penalties for discipline, CBA staff refer to the CBA disciplinary guidelines and model orders, which are all referred to as the guidelines. Those guidelines include factors to be considered in aggravation and mitigation and guidelines for specific offenses. As part of any disciplinary matter, the CBA may order any licensee or applicant for licensure or examination to pay an administrative penalty. For matters that go through the administrative hearing process, the CBA may request that an administrative law judge impose an administrative penalty as part of a proposed decision. Now, when probation is ordered, an administrative penalty may be included as a condition of probation. This agenda item focuses on cases within the last 2 fiscal years related to discipline based on actions taken against a licensee by the SEC, PCAOB, or another state board of accountancy, and also focuses on competency-based cases, outcomes from the last 2 fiscal years, as well as criminal conviction-related cases over the last 2 fiscal years. So I'll start with the SEC, PCAOB, and other state discipline-related cases. Many of these cases, as you will see from the chart, result in a stipulated settlement with revocation or suspension stayed and the licensee being placed on probation. The guidelines recommend a 3-year probation term, but consideration is given to mitigating factors such as if this is the first time a licensee has been involved in a disciplinary matter, if the licensee has been cooperative and admitted responsibility early in the proceedings, and if corrective actions have already been taken by the licensee. So we review all of those mitigating factors, and the result of those may be a shorter duration of probation. So instead of the 3 years that's recommended by the guidelines, it may be appropriate for an 18 or 24-month probation term. Moving on to Table 1 on page 2, you'll see that in the last 2 fiscal years, the CBA took disciplinary action on this case type for 22 licensees. Table 2 provides the number of administrative penalties imposed and the total penalty amount, and the penalties have a wide variety of range from $2,000 to $1.8 million. Now I'll discuss the competency-based cases. So these basically include violations for gross negligence, breach of fiduciary duty, audit documentation, and peer review. The guidelines recommend a minimum penalty of revocation stayed with 3 to 5 years probation for these types of cases. And Table 4 represents the number of administrative penalties imposed and the total penalty amount. And you will see for these types of cases, the penalties have ranged from $1,500 to $5,000. Now discussing the criminal conviction related cases. These cases include violations involving convictions of any crimes substantially related to the qualifications, functions, and duties of a CPA. The guidelines recommend a minimum penalty of revocation stayed, 3 years probation, and a 120-day suspension. Most of the discipline outcomes you will see result in a stipulated surrender or revocation. As shown in Table 5, the CBA took disciplinary action against 12 licensees, with 11 of those resulting in surrender or revocation in the last 2 fiscal years. Although we have the authority to impose an administrative penalty for these types of cases, the CBA does not typically assess this penalty for the defaults or surrenders. That concludes my presentation, and I will turn the discussion back over to Chair Dong and would be happy to answer any questions.
Sorry. Thank you so much for the presentation, the written report, and for taking into account the stakeholder comments that were received during the strategic review. So I know that this was not a discussion item, but I thought that I did have some questions that I wanted to ask. So in looking at the background for at least the administrative penalties. It looks like it's from the 10th edition to 2019. How often are the penalties adjusted for inflation?
So the penalties are set by statute, and that it doesn't have any consideration to inflation. If the board were wanting to see a change in the authority for the range of or the cap on administrative penalties, they would need to seek a legislative change.
So just so to have a sense of how other departments within the state of California are dealing, sort of with the increase in prices everywhere, are other departments asking for legislative changes to penalties that they might assess?
I'll be honest, I have no insight on that. It's not something we really generally would look at for this type of penalty, because it's a little bit different than a cost in goods of services and where you're looking at recouping cost for time spent as opposed to assessing a penalty. But maybe Mr. Cados has some insight.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any. I haven't had many clients at DCA, and I've not heard of that. And they're all set in either statute or regulation. So
Okay.
they're not. There's really no systemic effort to update those to inflation on a regular basis, unlike some things that are tied to the consumer price index and different things in statute. So each board or bureau would have to go in. Sometimes it's in regulation, and that can be done, but ours are in statute.
So for the administrative penalties, I noticed that for firms, it starts at $1 million and it's it's capped at $1 million, and the second complaint, I guess, or a violation leads to a violation of up to $5 million. How does that compare to the fines that are offered by PCAOB and SEC? Because it seems to be an order of magnitude that's a lot lower than what the SEC or PCAOB might be, fining firms that have violated certain standards.
So I don't know what their limitations are or what their structure is at the PCAOB or SEC. My guess, based on some of the recent fines that have been assessed by those organizations or those governmental entities, they don't have a limitation. So they must have other factors that they're considering and how they make determinations on those. But I'm happy to go back and the team look at under what structure they assess their penalties and how they come to maybe their final totals.
I think, and I might be wrong in thinking this, but in terms of the comment that we received during the strategic review, I believe the comment was, why aren't the penalties higher? And so the way to address that is to say, are they artificially low because they haven't been adjusted since 2019? Are they officially low because in comparison to other governmental entities, $1 million, $5 million, it's for some of these larger firms, it's a cost of doing business. It's not a heavy burden, especially if PCAOB can, levy, millions of dollars against firms for violating certain standards. So if we can report back on that just to see how it compares, I think that would be instructive. And I understand what you're saying in terms of the CPI comment. Cost recovery, I think, is maybe more tied with inflation. Is there a sense of when we do cost recovery for our investigative efforts, if we're including all the costs associated with hiring the personnel to perform that work? So not just salaries, but also benefits and everything else that goes into it.
Yeah, we do. I wouldn't say it's an every year type thing, but on a regular basis, especially. And I know the the Office of the Attorney General does the same when they assess some of their fees to us, because then we can count some of their cost recovery. So we look at our our staff, and it includes not just salary, but what's called OE&E, operating expenses and equipment. And if those are making adjustments along the way so that we're factoring in those costs.
Any questions among the other committee members about this item? Okay. Should I make a motion to report back, or how would we proceed?
We have to
do I have a motion? Okay. Is there any public comment here in Sacramento? Okay. Moderator, is there any public comment online?
This is the moderator. If anyone would like to make a comment, you may click on the hand icon to raise your hand, and our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. Are there any comments on this item? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion to approve this item? Oh, no motions at all. Okay. All right, we're ready to adjourn then. Thank you so much.
Good morning. Did you see that? I used my gravel. Exactly. Good morning. My name is Yan Tu, President of the California Board of Accountancy. Welcome everyone to our January 23rd, 2025 CBA meeting. At this point, I would like to let you know the CBA provide the opportunity for the public to participate via the WebEx platform. When we take public comments, we will begin by taking public comment from those individuals attending the meeting at the Sacramento location. I would then ask the moderator to open up the line for public comment on the WebEx. You will be allotted 5 minutes for public comment. Ms. Reed, could you take the roll of the board?
Doug Aguilera. Patricia Batchelor.
Here.
Nancy Corrigan.
Nancy Corrigan, present.
Nancy Dong.
Present.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines. Ann Jacobson.
Here.
Christian Lotta.
Present.
Tony Lynn. Joe Rosenbaum.
Here.
Yin Tu.
Here.
And Evangeline Ward.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. At this point, I would like to read the mission statement of the CPA for the record. The CPA's mission is to protect consumer by ensuring only qualified licensees practice public accountancy in accordance with established professional standards. This mission is derived from the statutory requirement that protection of the public shall be the highest priority for the California Board of Accountancy in exercising its licensing, regulatory, and disciplinary functions. Whenever the protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. All right, now we are going to go to the first item on the agenda. Any public comment for item not on the agenda? Any public comment from the Sacramento location? Seeing none, moderator, can you open up WebEx for comment?
Certainly. This is the moderator. If anyone would like to make a comment on an item that is not already on the agenda, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. Our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hands. Comments will be taken in the order submitted. And if you are on a mobile device, you may find that hand icon behind the 3-dot other options space. Each speaker will have 5 minutes with a 30-second warning. Are there any requests for comment? I do not see any requests. Shall I close that feature?
Please, thanks, moderator.
You're welcome.
All right, now we go to item number 2, report from the president. that would be me. The item 2A is report of the leadership roundtable meeting regarding California Board of Accountancy activity for 2025. Our leadership roundtable meeting was held yesterday, January 23rd. The meeting provided our leadership an opportunity to meet with Executive Officer Dominic Franzella and his executive team. During the meeting, we reviewed the planned meeting topic for 2025. We also spent time discussing priority projects for 2025. A few of those projects included actively working to advance the two legislative proposals approved by the CPA to modernize mobility and enhance CPA licensure requirements. We will get an update on this during the Legislative Committee report. We will be discussing we did discuss changes to the CPA continuing education requirements. As you may recall, immediate past President Joe Rosenbaum established a CE workshop in 2024 and will be presented with both of their recommendations and staff recommendations on enhancement during the coming year. We also touched on the importance of continuing the business modernization project. Staff are working with the Department of Consumer Affairs Office of Information Services leadership on creating a roadmap to accomplish future projects, including a new online examination application, yay, unifying current online systems, and transitioning to a enforcement case management system. Of course, we will continue to build on all the success we have had with our outreach activities. There is a new 2025 outreach plan that we will review and approve today that will provide the foundation for 2025. We have a very productive discussion, and we would like to thank my fellow leader, Ms. Lada and Mr. Aguilar, for their support. So 2025 will be another productive year for our CPA. That is my report. Does anybody from the Sacramento location have any comment? Seeing none, Ms. Moderator, please open up WebEx for comment.
This is the moderator. If anyone would like to make a comment on this item, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. Our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. Are there any comments on the report? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you. Moving on to item 2B, announcement of new committee and liaison assignment. This is a written report. If anybody have any question on the board or comment, I will take that now. Seeing none, anybody from Sacramento location would like to make a comment? Seeing none, Ms. Moderator, please open up WebEx for a comment.
Thank you. If anyone has a comment on the new committee and liaison assignments, you may raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, and our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. Any comments on the new assignments? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Please, thank you.
You're welcome.
Item 2C, Department of Consumer Affairs Director's Report on Departmental Activity. Ms. Judy Bucciarelli.
Morning, board members. Good to see you today. My name is Judy Bucciarelli from DCA. Happy New Year, and thank you for the opportunity to join the meeting today and provide the DCA update. Before I begin today's update, I would like to recognize Member Dan Jacobson for your many years of service to the California Board of Accountancy. We wish you good luck in your future endeavors.
Thank you very much.
To begin the report today, I'd like to provide a governor's 2025-26 proposed state budget update. Governor Newsom released his proposed 25-26 state budget on January 10th, which included 8 budget change proposals for DCA boards and bureaus. Additionally, DCA's vacancy reduction and government efficiency plans were approved by the Department of Finance and expected to be made official in spring revisions. The governor remains committed to funding resources to address California's housing and homelessness crisis. Included in the governor's proposed budget is the creation of a dedicated California Housing and Homeless Agency. The Department of Consumer Affairs and other regulators currently under the Business and Consumer Services and Housing Agency would form a consumer protection agency. This is an extraordinary opportunity for DCA to better align with other consumer protection entities as one consumer protection agency. With the Consumer Protection Agency Secretary within the governor's cabinet, this is an exciting opportunity that will only strengthen our mission, momentum, and delivery of services to California. The governor's reorganization proposal will be reviewed by the nonpartisan Little Hoover Commission and the legislature in the spring. As more information is available, DCA will continue to keep board leadership updated. Next, I have an update on Form 700 filing changes effective January 1, 2025. The governor signed AB 1170, which requires board members to now file their Form 700s electronically with the Fair Political Practice Commission, FPPC, using the FPPC's electronic filing system. Effective January 1st, 2025, DCA board members must file Form 700s through FPPC's online system. Filings will no longer be filed via the NetFile portal that DCA board members have been using for many years. Additionally, paper filings will not be accepted. The FPPC emailed all board members on January 2nd with a link to the FPPC portal and included login information. As a reminder, the annual Form 700 filing deadline is Tuesday, April 1st. Please contact Board and Bureau Relations at memberrelations@dca.ca.gov with any questions regarding the new requirements. Next, President's Training will be held on February 19th. DCA invites presidents and vice presidents to attend our annual President's Training on February 19th from 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. This virtual training is for board members who are new to the role of president or vice president and those who have served in one of these roles for a year or more. The training will review the role of a board president, communication best practices with the executive officer and board members, as well as the president's administrative duties. The training will also include a panel of prior board members who will share their knowledge and expertise and be available to answer questions from attendees. Learning from each other is a large part of this training, and we look forward to seeing all presidents and vice presidents at the training. Please register online using DCA's learning management system. Next, I have an update regarding the board and bureau relations team. I wanted to share an update regarding DCA's Board and Bureau Relations team. Yvonne Durante served as Assistant Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations since October 2022. On December 6th, Governor Newsom appointed Yvonne as the Assistant Deputy Director of Legislative and Government Affairs at the California Office of Emergency Services. Yvonne's last day at DCA was December 31st. We appreciate Yvonne's dedication to Board and Bureau Relations team and wish her well in her new role. And to close, I have a message from Director Kirchmeier. She would like to thank the board and the staff for their hard work and partnership last year. She is excited about 2025 and the many opportunities that await us, and wishes to thank you for your dedicated service that protects California's consumers every day. This concludes the DCA update. I appreciate your time this morning, and now I'll turn the floor back to President Tu and welcome any questions from the board.
Thank you very much for all the information and report and update you provided. Any board member have any questions? Yes, Ms. Lara.
Thank you, President Tu. Apologies if you mentioned these things and I missed them. What was the date for the annual Vice President training, and was that virtual training?
It's February 19th. I believe it is in person. It does not, it's a virtual training. Excuse me, it's virtual.
And apologies if this was mentioned. In terms of our annual board training, did you mention the deadlines for those?
She's talking about the sexual harassment and violent,
okay,
other training that are required every 2 years.
Okay, I believe, okay.
They're finalizing a new vendor. It's my understanding for that particular class, so it's not available right now. When it does become available, staff will reach out to you with an email so that you can take it and get into your LMS account. You'll also get a notification in your LMS account.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Pierce.
But you're right. It is this year that we would have to do all those trainings. So she get an A for effort right there. All right. Thank you very much. Anybody from the public in Sacramento? Oh, sorry, Ms. Dan Jacobson.
Thank you. I apologize but since I'm going to have to file my final Form 700 within 30 days, what was that email address that I know I'm going to be using for help? And should I say help?
Okay. So it's member relations at dca.ca.gov.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
A question about the meeting date you had mentioned, which was February 19th for the online training. Is this required for the chair and vice chair of any of the legislative or statutory committees?
That's not for the committee president and vice president yet. It's for the board president and vice president at this point. Seeing no other members, anybody from the public in Sacramento? Seeing none, Ms. Moderator, could you open up WebEx for comment?
Certainly. If anyone has a comment on the DCA update, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. And our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hands. Any comments on the DCA update? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Moderator.
You're welcome.
Right. Next agenda item is item number 3, report from the Vice President, Ms. Lara.
Thank you, President Tu. This item is to recommend the reappointment of Jeffrey Moline, CPA. The Qualifications Committee assists the CBA in its licensure activities by reviewing the experience of applicants for licensure and making recommendations to the CBA. This includes conducting work paper reviews, excuse me, with the applicant or the employer present to verify that the responses provided are reflective of the requisite experience for licensure. I have conferred with the CBA executive officer to verify that each individual has met the appropriate requirements for license renewal and has demonstrated the skills and knowledge to serve in a leadership capacity on the Qualifications Committee. I would like to make a motion to reappoint Jeffrey Moline, CPA, through January 31st, 2027. I will turn it back to President Tu and ask for a second. Thank you.
Do I see,
I
Mr.
second
Jacobson?
that.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobson. That's a motion. And if there's any comment from the public in Sacramento? Any comment from the WebEx? Ms. Moderator, can you open that up?
Certainly, if anyone would like to make a comment, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. Are there any comments on this issue? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Reed, could you call the roll for the motion?
Doug Aguilera,
Yes.
Patricia Batchelor,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Nancy Dong,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Christian Lauda,
Yes.
Tony Lynn, Joe Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Yin Tu, and Evangeline Ward.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Now we move on to item number 4, report of the Secretary Treasurer, Mr. Aguilar.
Thank you, President Tu. The governor's proposed budget was released on January 10th, 2025. The CBA's proposed budget for fiscal year 25-26 is $20,177,000. The process for the legislature to review the governor's proposed budget will continue through June 15th, 2025, which is the state's constitutional deadline for the legislature to approve the Budget Act and submit it to the governor for approval. Once the governor approves the budget, it becomes effective July 1, 2025. Information on the CBA's approved budget for fiscal year 25-26 will be provided at the July 2025 CBA meeting. The CBA's mid-year financial report will be presented at the March meeting. That concludes my report. I will now turn it back over to President Tu.
Thank you, Mr. Aguilar, for that report. And I know on the agenda we have a lunch break, but due to our fabulous leadership in committee, they got us going really fast, and we are going to continue on the agenda until we're done with item number 5 and 6. Moving on to number 5 then. That's right. I forgot about public comment. On item, the report from Mr. Aguilar, any public comment from Sacramento? Seeing none, moderator, could you please open up WebEx?
Certainly. If anyone would like to make a comment on the report on the governor's budget, you may look for the hand icon and click that, or our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hands. Are there any comments on the presentation? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you so much.
You're
All right. Item number 5, report of the executive officer, Mr. Dominic Franzella.
Thank you. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Pierce to start item 5A.
Thank you. Agenda item 5A is the proposed changes to the California Board of Accountancy Member Guidelines and Procedures Manual, or GMP Manual. The GMP Manual is designed to serve as a reference guide regarding the functions of the CBA and its committees. The edits are identified by underline and strike through. I will highlight some of the substantive proposed changes. However, I'm happy to answer questions regarding any changes noted in the manual. On page 12, we updated the number of enforcement complaints received. Pages 12 through 14 updated the percentage of enforcement matters regarding default decisions, stipulated settlements, and proposed decisions. On page 19, we updated the Qualification Committee's purpose. Page 20, we removed reference to the Mobility Stakeholder Group. Page 29, we updated the sexual harassment prevention training information. Page 30, we added information regarding the required workplace violence prevention training and policy acknowledgement. And on page 36, we updated the resource list. There were other minor non-substantive changes made to improve overall clarity. This concludes my presentation. I'd like to turn it back over to President Tu for a possible motion, and I'm happy to answer any questions that members may have.
Thank you, Ms. Pierce. Any question from board members? Seeing none, any comment or question from the public in Sacramento? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez, for keeping me honest. Do we have a motion from the board first?
I would like to make a motion to approve the January 2025 version of the CPA member guide.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenbaum. Is there a second? Ms. Corrigan, would you like to second?
Yes, I will second that motion. Thank you.
Excellent. Any comment further from the board members? All right, now we go to the public in Sacramento for comments. Seeing none, Ms. Moderator, could you open up WebEx?
Certainly. If anyone would like to make a comment on the motion about the member guidelines, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, and our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. Are there any comments on the proposed changes? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. Ms. Reed, could you call the roll?
Evangeline Ward,
Yes.
Yen Tu,
Yes.
Joe Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Tony Lynn, Christian Lotta,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
Nancy Dong,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Patricia Batchelor,
Yes.
and Doug Aguilera.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Moving on to item 5B, administration activity report. Ms. Pierce, do you have a report?
Just a brief one. As you have probably already noticed, there is a new look to the CBA and committee meeting agendas. The new modern look now features a color header, a sidebar listing the board or committee members' names, simplified item numbers, no more Roman numerals, and a public participation page with information and instructions for the public to participate. And just briefly on our business modernization project, staff is currently developing new online options for the examination applicants on the CBA Connect platform. The project has a new manager. Stephanie Teo has transitioned into the business modernization project specialist position, and she started with the CBA in April 2024 and transitioned to the BizMod project in December. She previously worked for the Intel Corporation, and her work experience will greatly benefit our team. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board? Ms. Latta?
Thank you. Ms. Pierce, I just wanted to say I did notice the updates to the agenda, and they are lovely to look at, and I enjoyed the colorful adjustments, and I really enjoyed the header on the side listing the committee members. So great job on the new format, and I love it. So thank you.
Yes, Ms. Corrigan.
Yes, and I want to make that same comment. The consistency, just the changes, the upgrading, modernization, everything looks great. Very helpful to have it this way. Thank you.
Yes, Tony Lynn.
On the updated regulations, I do have some questions on the amended regulations regarding the accounting firm providing artist service with the ownership comprised solely of the CPAs who have not completed the artist experience requirement. So, does this proposal amended include any condition guidelines from the CBA to allow accounting firm with ownership solely comprised of the CPAs who have not completed the artist experience requirement to provide the artist service. Do we have any condition or guideline?
This particular package, and Mr. Frenzel, please jump in if I'm incorrect, but this particular package is more of a notification to the client regarding the firm not having a CPA employed with the firm to be able to sign a test report. So it's more on the notification component to the client.
But I'm sorry, yeah. But from what I see, from this description, we are allowing them to do the service. For the amendment is we are allowing the firm to provide the service.
Yes, yes. But the ownership of the firm is not authorized to sign the reports on the attest engagements.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a notification regarding that.
So what would do we have any potential risk could this propose to the public? Would this cause any potential risk? How the CBA ensure the public protection is not comprised in such case?
So maybe just taking a step back a little bit to provide some context on this proposal, but just the concept in general related to a firm who is authorized just by the sheer nature of being a firm to provide attest services, but the ownership, doesn't have anybody in the ownership group who is authorized to sign those reports. This was a couple of things kind of came out of a task force several years ago called the Consideration of the I can't remember what it stands for anymore. It was the CERT task force. I can't remember what the acronym stood for, but they looked at the attest experience requirement. And after it was determined that the attest experience requirement would be maintained, there was some other subsidiary acts that they took to improve consumer protection. And one of them is this regulation related to notification to consumers to make sure a consumer knows that the firm may be authorized to do it, but that the ownership that makes up that firm is not authorized to sign those reports, and who on staff will be signing those reports, what their license number is, so they can go and look them up to see if there's the currency of their license or if there's been any prior enforcement actions. And there was a couple of other things. To the first part of your question about, I believe, related to a owner getting the experience at some point to be able to sign those reports at a future date. The board has discussed that on a couple of occasions. I'll have to touch base with Ms. Center to double check. I don't know where that process stands, but I do know the board has provided some direction and has been methodically working through that scenario where a firm owner can somehow get the experience necessary to go from a general attest experience or general experience to an attest experience while they're an owner, because the current way that the regulations are put together really don't afford them that opportunity. But recognizing that that needs to be addressed, the board is taking some incremental steps. This reg is not associated with that, though.
Thank you for the clarification. Thank you.
Ms. Batchelor?
So I have a question, just wanted some clarity. If a firm without the attest takes on the engagement, that particular firm would be going through the peer review also?
Yeah, and part of the notification requirement here isn't just about notifying the client, but also notifying the peer reviewer or the team captain that the ownership of that firm, the firm is doing services that would subject them to peer review, so the attest and the audit or the reviews and the audit work, and that if the ownership doesn't have anybody who's there to sign those reports, they have to notify the peer reviewer, so it's at least considered as part of the whole peer review process.
And then I have another part of the question. The person that would sign off on that firm, would that have to be a person working for the firm? It could be someone on the outside.
So the instances that we've been dealing with it's just an employee of the firm. And so they are employed under the firm and subject to the licensee or the supervision of the licensee. I don't think I've come across a scenario where they're using a third party outside CPA as an employee.
But there's no reason why they cannot contractually get some outside.
I'll be honest, I don't know if I would say that right off the top of my head. I think I'd need to be thinking about it, but the circumstances that we generally face and we've historically faced are they have a staff member who has the attest experience, and these are the ones that we've had issues with in the past, and these are some of the loopholes or improvements that need to be addressed under that scenario. But then also to Mr. Lynn's point earlier is trying to create an avenue for those owners to eventually become licensed with the attest authority so that that kind of structure doesn't have to continue to exist.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other question from the board members or comment? Seeing none, anybody from the public like to comment on this item? Seeing none, Ms. Moderator, could you open up WebEx for comments or question?
Certainly. If anyone has any comment on the item, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. Each speaker will have 5 minutes with a 30-second warning. Are there any comments? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Moderator.
You're welcome.
Right. We're going on to item 5C, discussion and possible action regarding the California Board of Accountancy 2025 outreach plan. Mr. Hemphill.
There we go. Thank you, President Tu. Members of the CBA, good morning. I am David Hemphill, Information and Planning Officer. Today I'll be presenting the newly retitled California Board of Accountancy 2025 Outreach Plan. Beginning this year, the Communications and Outreach Plan has been renamed to Outreach Plan. This change aligns with the CBA's broader initiative to rebrand our communications and outreach as simply Outreach. So there we go. So the purpose of this agenda item is to provide the board with an opportunity to discuss, provide feedback, possibly approve the proposed 2025 outreach plan, which I will refer to as the 2025 plan, and you can see it in your attachment 1. So the goal of this outreach plan is to provide a framework that discusses the CBA's strategic communication and outreach goals and how it intends to increase the effectiveness of its activities in pursuit of these goals. Many aspects have been revised from the 2024 Communications and Outreach Plan, including the target audiences, which have been redefined. Our 2025 priorities were identified and described, and I will highlight some of the more important ones shortly. We added some visual elements to the 2025 plan, graphically displaying our target audiences and strategic goals to give it a little color. I'm happy to report that nearly all priorities outlined in the 2024 Communications and Outreach Plan were accomplished last year, and you can see that in attachment 2, which provides a detailed update on those 2024 priorities. Some of the key priorities from the 2025 plan include point-in-time email communications to engage licensees at key moments in their license renewal cycle. The CBA will create targeted email messaging to be sent strategically throughout the year, and this campaign will rely on the functionality of the listserv email platform, the development of which is another priority for 2025. Potentially expanding the update publication is another priority, as staff will explore the possibility of moving its production timeline to quarterly or every 3 months instead of the current 4-month schedule. Outreach events for consumers, applicants, and licensees continue to be a priority in 2025. This year, the CBA plans to participate in a wide variety of outreach events, including university and community college presentations, high school career fairs, consumer-focused community events, and more. We will also coordinate with partners such as Cal CPA to add to our outreach schedule. Some of the other 2025 priorities you can see on the list: communication of the CBA legislative proposals, meetings with legislators and legislative staff, social media engagement, digital-based outreach, website updates, educational institution partnerships, and of course, all of these should be viewed through the lens of growing audience diversity. So details on more of those can be found in the 2025 plan. So we welcome any feedback the board may have, and it is our recommendation that the CBA approve the 2025 outreach plan. So that concludes my presentation on this agenda item, but I'll turn it back over to President Tu, and I'm happy to answer any questions the members may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hemphill. Anybody on the board? Yes, Ms. Dong.
Not necessarily a question about the plan. Thank you for that presentation. So I just had maybe some feedback in terms of the wildfire assistance that I see that was presented on the website. So I really appreciate that as somebody from an area of California that has been hammered by wildfires. So there is an announcement I see where there is assistance for those affected by the wildfires. There's very little, I feel like the details are kind of sparse on there because it doesn't name the regions or how long, some CPAs might have to renew their licenses if they have been affected by the wildfire. Could there be more details added to that section?
So are you speaking specifically about the web page that we put up?
Yeah, the
recently?
web page. And I know
Okay.
there's an email address. Thank you for providing a resource for CPAs to be able to email the CBA for more information. But if you could perhaps provide more information about, what are the requirements for receiving assistance? Do you have to be in certain geographical areas?
Sure.
We're also allowing extension in terms of completing CEs and also filing for renewals. How long is that extension for? Have we thought about that? Is it just a blanket statement? Are we sort of making it up?
Yeah, we can certainly. Actually, Michelle, do you want to? Any thought on that?
I can provide a little bit of context and why you don't see information such as how long will that extension be. We are required to look at these requests on a case-by-case basis. So it isn't as if you just say, well, there's a fire, so I will give you 6 months. We look at it and determine what is the situation that they have. Have they lost their home? Are they displaced? Or was it a situation where maybe they were just evacuated and they were out of their home for a week and now they're back, right? So we look at these on a case-by-case basis and make those decisions about the length of time. Otherwise, we do not have authority to do any kind of blanket type of extension, if that's kind of addresses that one question you had.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Center. Appreciate that.
Yes, Ms. Ward.
Well, just to follow up on that too, is it possible to provide more information to consumers about filing extensions to their tax returns? I know there are other websites that will provide that information, but as a one-stop source for consumers.
Yeah, I think we could add that to that webpage.
Just because there are a large number of small businesses that have been affected by the wildfires and continue to be affected because it seems like every other day there's another incident. So if we can have that in one location, that might be helpful and also might draw more people towards the website if they know that it's a one-stop shop for that type of information.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that suggestion.
Ms. Ward?
I think I have a suggestion, or maybe there's something you're already doing in regards to educators. I would like to say that when you reach out to the schools, to maybe also focus on different organizations with culture or minority, to where like at my campus, we have a group where African American students, but my job is to bring in different professions to introduce them to the profession. That way, if we only reach out to the educators regarding accounting, then of course they're going to get it, but also reach out to the groups where they are deciding what they want to major in. That way we're promoting accountancy, but same time reaching out to those target groups as well, because they have no idea about accounting,
Yeah.
which I promote hygiene. They have no idea about hygiene.
Yeah.
Doctor, nurse. Are you here, doctor, nurse? So just my suggestion to reach out to those minority groups, those organizations, those clubs, to find out if you can participate in their events as well.
Great. Yeah, I like that idea. So certainly when we're talking to the faculty or on the campuses, we can expand and go beyond that and try to come up with maybe even a listing of some of the clubs or groups that they have on campus. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Ms. Corrigan and then Mr. Jacobson.
Yes, as a follow-up, the recommendation, Ms. Dong, to make more information available on the CBA website. Just a caution that I think it's okay to give them references, check the IRS website, check here for FTB, whatever, so that we're not quoting, because as you know, in other disasters, some of those filing deadlines they change all over the place. That way we're not quoted, we're not an authority on that, but I think giving the information. I also wanted to, kind of a second item is on page 2 of 15, the strategic goals, the framework and kind of the graphic item that is there. We have build, empower, ensure, cultivate, promote, drive, increase. Very positive, wonderful message and very attractive, I think. Yeah, so I was very happy with the whole plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Quinn.
Mr. Jacobson.
Thank you. So perhaps you could put the information that Michelle gave that it's going to be done on a case by case basis on that site. That would be very helpful, and I would suggest and plead, beg that there be some liberality shown here, because it's just a mess down there. I'm a county over, which somehow has missed been missed by the fires, but you can still see the smoke, and it's a hellscape down there.
I don't want to speak for Michelle's team, but I know that they are doing everything they can to be as accommodating as possible to those that were affected. So I can assure you of that.
Ms. Batchelor?
This may have already been addressed, but if it's so, please forgive me, but I probably missed it. Is there anything being done to outreach to students in high school?
Yeah, well, that's one of the things I did mention, that we did our first career fair, well, at least first kind of in recent past, a high school career fair in the fall, and that's definitely on our list to do high schools, if not junior high schools, middle schools as well. Yeah, so that is one of the main things that we're going to be scheduling this year.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and developing, materials for them, and, to just find them right where they are, as they're, important to reach the youth as they're just coming down this path of, what do I want to be when I grow up? And, and really put in their minds the excitement that could come along with being a CPA, if I may use that word.
I think the battery is running out. I think I'm talking too much. Yes, Ms. Lata, but before you do that, Ms. Lata, I think you hit it on the head when you say meet them where they are in terms of outreach activity. So just keep that in your mind when you're doing it. And I know you do a fantastic job, so please continue.
Thank you.
Ms. Lata.
Thank you, President Tu. Thank you, Mr. Hemphill. I in support of the rebrand to just calling it outreach. rather than communications and outreach. And I really enjoy the infographics. They're always very informative and very clear, and I enjoy those. I did have something that jumped out to me regarding the target audiences. I'm mainly looking at the chart on page 3. And apologies that this didn't come to mind during our roundtable yesterday. But I did notice that one of the audience is not firms or employers. And I know that we primarily focus on the beginning of the pipeline and getting interest and, getting the message out there about CPAs and what the opportunities are. But part of that process is the retention of CPAs in the industry. And it's something we maybe don't want to talk about often, but work-life balance is something that current CPAs are, hoping that improves, and the firm culture and things like that impact the retention of CPAs remaining in the field. So that is part of the pipeline discussion. In my opinion, is keeping CPAs in the pipeline and, improving the industry as a whole, not just, getting people to come into our industry. So I was just curious, and I didn't see it mentioned in partnerships either, that we partner with firms. So I was just curious kind of where are we currently with interacting with some of the larger firms and just being aware of kind of their improvements they're making with firm culture, or I'm just kind of trying to gauge where we are with that and if we can maybe increase outreach in that area as well.
Yeah. Well, I think that is one of the things we could probably add that in under the licensees section, kind of maybe a bullet point kind of specific to that. But that is something that has been in my mind for this year, because I'll be honest, there hasn't been a whole lot of communication directly to firms. So I can kind of work with Ms. Center, who has a few of those relationships more so, and kind of develop that, because I agree with everything that you just said. So,
Ms. Batchelor?
Yes, I wanted to echo off of what Ms. Lotta is speaking of, because I'm in a women's forum on social media, women's accounting group, and some of them are proud to say that, I got a smile on my face because it's kind of funny in some of the statements they've made, but they said, I just quit my job because it was so toxic. And there were several likes and applause, and you're giving me courage to do it as well. So there is something wrong. And as Ms. Lotta had addressed, something should be spoken to the firms about that. They should be included, because to be happy that you're quitting and now I'm looking for another job because it was so toxic, it was just amazing to me. So just something to think about. Excellent, Ms. Lotta.
Ms. Lotta?
Yeah, and just to echo off of that, it's great that we're bringing more CPAs into the industry, but such a shame to have them mistreated or be welcomed into this thing that we're promoting to be such a positive and valuable thing, which it is, but it can be tarnished and tainted by some of the former or current workplace culture practices happening. So, I think we should do our due diligence to make sure that we're welcoming them into a positive environment and try to do our job to, create that as well and push that forward in the industry as well.
Yeah, I think we can certainly address that topic. I don't know how much the CBA needs to get involved in, how the firms are running their own culture or whatnot. But I think that's valid, that we can, like you said, bring them into the fold and have a better relationship with them.
Any other comments, questions? I would like to open up this to the Sacramento audience. If anybody want to comment, I see someone coming.
Hello, Denise Fremming, CEO of Cal CPA. And I just wanted to mention that regarding the outreach to high schools, middle school, we've reached out to, and to community colleges. We can definitely work with the CPA and that, plugging them into a lot of the initiatives that we have. So that kind of helps us both. And we've done that in the past in some of the other initiatives. I would say too, from the firm perspective, I hear you, Patricia, because that's out there. And Kristen too, you're spot on. So we have started initiatives where we reach out to those firms that are actually doing a great job and highlight what they're doing and showcase some of their initiatives. So we can also plug you into that as well.
Okay.
So many opportunities for us to work together and partner.
And we appreciate that partnership.
Thank you. We do
Yeah,
too.
and Denise, I think retention is very important to your industry. So I applaud you for making sure don't skip that aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. We can get many people in, young professionals, but if we don't keep them, I mean, that's where, and then they unfortunately go and, communicate that as well. So we have to do a much better job there. And that's one of our initiatives is kind of shifting that identity. That's what we're focused on. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have one more speaker. Come on up.
So Ruben Davila, and reacting to some of the comments about reaching people where they are. So I'm one of the educators, and we've tried. David and I have tried to work quite a bit about creating an event, and we have some scheduling challenges. But one of the things that I think is really important in reaching potential CPAs is your presence and their idea that they're joining a profession. So this idea of saying the word accountant, I keep on trying to change that to professional accountant or CPA. To me, it's the difference between being a mechanic and being an engineer. They're both important, but there's a little bit different level of professionalism involved. So one of the things I've made it a mission as I kind of enter my sunset years at USC is reaching out to the community. I literally teach a course that is only transfer students that come to our institution. Almost all of those students, 95%, and I'm hedging because I think it's around 99% are community college transfer students coming from blue collar backgrounds, first generation students. I teach that class on purpose because they are my people. We partner, and I say we partner, I'm talking about USC purposefully with that group, with our community college professors, bring them on campus, bring their students on campus to expose them to the opportunities in the profession. That's one of the things that I think that we're working on. So it's not only just the CBA, but the CBA, we've had events with Cal CPA. We're co-sponsoring an event on March 8th. This is news to David because we're supposed to talk about this a little bit later. So if any of you are in Southern California on March 8th, I invite you to join. I think it's really important that somebody sees that they're part of a profession. I have 2 licenses. One of them is an attorney's license. The other one's a CPA license. The CPA license opened many, many doors to me, and I want to share those opportunities at the same time. So the big takeaway, and we also have events where we bring high school students from the surrounding community around USC at the same time too. And you're dealing with an incredibly diverse, multi-ethnic group of people in their surrounding community. So there's potential opportunities, and there's doing it alone, and there's doing it together. And part of the deal is, from my standpoint, is let's partner and do this together. And David and I are working, and there's challenges about dates and budgets and stuff like that, but we're trying to work through it. I don't know how it works, from a requirement standpoint, if you would show up at an event, but not as a formal board. Our objective is to have a board meeting on campus at USC, or then you can go meet students and talk to them and they can see. That's our ultimate objective. But if we can't do that, it would be nice to have somebody at an event talking about, here's what we do. And I think I want to emphasize that we're working on this together. And David, we've tried really hard. We're going to get something in the queue pretty soon. So thank you for doing this and thank you for the outreach.
Thank you for your comment. And I have to say the last few years, all the board meeting that we combine with outreach activity has been valuable. And I think everybody enjoyed it too, to meet all the students and so forth. All right, so it is now 12:15. Oh, that's right. We need a motion first of all.
I'd like to move to approve the CBA 2025 outreach plan.
Excellent. Do I see a second? Ms. Dong, second the motion. Any other comment from board member? Any further? I need to go to WebEx because we already did the comment from the segmental location. Ms. Moderator, can you open up WebEx?
Certainly. If anyone would like to make a comment on the outreach action outreach plan, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hands. Are there any comments on the report? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. It's actually a comment for the motion itself. So, Ms. Reed, could you call the roll for the motion?
Doug Aguilera,
Reed, can we have one more board member want to say something? Mr. Lin?
Thank you. Since we have a motion, I would like to know about the, do we have any detailed budget for the traveling for the, to attend the event?
Can you address the travel?
The question, do we have a specified budget for outreach events?
From this physical analyze, and it says we need the some travel costs to attend the outreach event. I would like to see if we have any detailed budgeting for that. Yeah.
We don't have a specific line item in the budget focused on outreach. It's kind of spread out amongst several different things: per diem if board members attend, travel if there's any kind of travel related to it. Any items we need to purchase for the event would be out of a different line item. So we don't have a specific allotment of money focused on outreach. We obviously just need to stay within our overall allocated budget authority for that particular fiscal year.
Baked into our annual budget, correct?
So
Yeah.
we're able to travel.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Ms. Reed, back to your roll call.
all right. Doug Aguilera,
Yes.
Patricia Batchelor,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Nancy Dong,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Christian Lauda,
Yes.
Tony Lynn,
Yes.
Joe Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Yen Tu,
Yes.
and Evangeline Ward.
Yes.
The motion carries.
All right. Thanks, Ms. Reed. And due to the hour, we're going to go to our lunch break. David, you're going to come. We're going to do item 6. I beg your pardon, because we want to be able to let the people waiting on virtual too. We're going to skip your next item 5D and then come back to that after lunch break. And then we're going to go to item 6, the report on the Enforcement Advisory Committee, Qualification Committee, and the peer review. 6A is Enforcement Advisory Committee, and Ms. Benjamin is going to be reporting.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Benjamin, and I am the Enforcement Advisory Committee Vice Chair, and I'll be presenting the CBA Item 6A report of the December 5th, 2024 Enforcement Advisory Committee meeting. The EAC held its meeting in person on December 5th, 2024 at the Holiday Inn in Holiday Inn Bayside in beautiful San Diego. At the meeting, the members focused on reviewing 10 investigative files and provided valuable insight and feedback to assist the staff with the next steps in the investigative process. The EAC held 2 investigative hearings, and our next EAC meeting will be held on May 1st, 2025. That concludes my report, and I turn back to President Tu and would be happy to answer any questions the members, CBA members may have, or members of the public.
All right, thanks, Ms. Benjamin. That was very helpful. Does any board member have any questions? See none, we're going to move on to the next B and so forth, B and C, and then we're going to do public comment after we do 6A, B, and C. So next on the agenda is 6B, Peer Review Oversight Committee, and we have Mr. Hinojoso here to on WebEx to do the report.
One moment. You're muted. I've sent a request.
My apologies. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, good afternoon, President Tu, members of the board. I am Fausto Hinojosa, Chair of the CBA's Peer Review Oversight Committee. I'm happy to provide a report on the PROC's December 13th meeting. First, I would like to thank CBA Liaison Tony Lin for attending our meeting and providing an overview of the CBA's activities from the September and November CBA meetings. The PROC members have engaged in several oversight activities since its August meeting. Members attended 8 report acceptance body meetings. PROC members reported that these meetings all met expectations. I attended a peer review board meeting and concluded that the PRB meeting met expectations as to its effectiveness for its role in the peer review process. Additionally, members reviewed 2 out-of-state administering entities, the Oklahoma Society of CPAs and Partners in Peer Review. It was determined that they complied with the administrative procedures and standards in all material respects as established by the CBA. On August 14th, PROC members Laura Ross and Nick Peterson completed the 2024 administrative site visit to the California Society of Certified Public Accountants. Licensing Chief Michelle Center was also in attendance. The PROC was presented with the report on the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants Peer Review Program National Peer Review Committee 2023 Annual Report on Oversight, which Alfred Burleson from the Initial Licensing Division presented a report on the California Board of Accountancy Licensure and Mobility Legislative Proposal. Lastly, the PROC reviewed and discussed the draft 2024 Peer Review Oversight Committee Annual Report. The PROC provided staff with edits and suggestions that CBA staff will incorporate and bring back to the PROC for review and approval. Our next PROC meeting will be held on February 14, 2025. I would now like to turn discussion on this item back over to President Tu, and I'd be happy to answer any questions members may have.
Thank you for that report. Does any board member have any question or comment? Seeing none, thank you for that report again. And we're moving on to 6C, Qualification Committee, and Mr. Molina is here in person.
Good afternoon, President Tu and members of the board. I'm Jeffrey Moline, Chair of the CBA's Qualifications Committee. I'm pleased to be here and provide a report on the Qualifications Committee's meeting, which was held yesterday. First, I would like to thank the Qualifications Committee Liaison CBA member Evangeline Ward for attending our meeting and providing an overview of the CBA's November meeting. Thank you. At our meeting, staff provided updates on the activities of the licensing division, including the licensing activity report, an update on the CBA's licensure and mobility legislative proposal, and the 2024 Report on Long-Term Licensing Data Trends. Since April 2024, the QC has convened 3 subcommittee meetings to conduct interviews with employers and applicants to review work papers of attest experience. In total, there were 4 Section 69 reviews and 3 personal appearances. 4 applicants were recommended for approval and 3 were recommended for deferral. As a background, the QC conducts Section 69 reviews when staff believe additional or clarifying information is needed from a California licensee who has signed a certificate of experience, or when a licensee fails to submit a certificate of experience or comply with a request for an explanation of experience. Our next QC meeting will be held on April 23rd, 2025. This concludes my report. At this time, I'll turn it back to President Tu and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Molina. Anybody on the board have any question or comment? Seeing none, now we're going to take public comment for all 3 items, which is 6A, B, and C. Anybody from the Sacramento office have any questions or comment? Seeing none, Miss Moderator, could you open WebEx for comments?
Certainly. We've opened up the WebEx feature for public comment on the 3 committee reports. If you'd like to make a comment on any of those, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. Our call-in user may press *3 to raise their hand. Each speaker will have 5 minutes with a 30-second warning. Are there any comments on the, my apologies, on the reports? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Moderator.
You're welcome.
Hey, thank you again for being here in person as well, and all the chair of the committee for their reports. All right, now we will be able to go to our lunch and come back at 1:30 to continue our board meeting. Thank you all. So forth. Now we're back in continuing our meeting. We're now going back to item 5D. Mr. Hemhill will continue his report.
All right. Hello again, everyone. Good afternoon. Next item I will be presenting is item 5D, which is the newly titled Outreach Activity Report. So similar to the Outreach Plan, we'll also be changing the title. This was previously known as the Communications and Outreach Report. So now it's the Outreach Activity Report. So we've got the EAR, the LAR, and now I guess we have an OR. So it fits in. So first, a quick recap of the final 2 outreach events of 2024. The night before our November meeting, the CBA headed to Manteca to participate in the San Joaquin chapter of the California Society of CPAs annual student night. The event brought aspiring CPAs together with local professionals. Staff interacted directly with those in attendance as they went table to table in a speed mentoring format and was able to answer questions. So that was a good event. Then in early December, the CBA participated in the first annual CPA Con, which was held in Los Angeles, attended by about 100 professionals and students. The event was the brainchild of licensee Kendale King, CPA, who was featured in an interview in Update 103, if you had a chance to look at that. CPA Con aimed to be much more than your average accounting convention. The day consisted of accounting-based games and competitions he referred to as the Accounting Olympics, interspersed with expert panels on a wide variety of topics, and of course, plenty of networking. The CBA had a booth there, and staff connected with attendees who stopped by to grab some of the informational flyers we were handing out and check out the This is the CBA videos, which were playing on a monitor. CBA Vice President Christian Lata, CPA, and Enforcement Advisory Committee Chair Kathy Johnson, CPA, attended the event and were featured on the Careers in Accounting panel. sharing their story about their path to licensure and inspiring the student attendees to follow in their footsteps. The event underscored the CBA's commitment to building an inclusive and thriving accounting community. So we're looking forward to seeing CPACon grow in the years to come. The CBA's 2025 outreach calendar is starting to take shape. 2 events are coming up next month. We'll be partnering with 2 universities in February to give our Your CPA Roadmap presentation. The first will be in person at the University of California, Berkeley on the 21st, followed by a virtual event with California State University, Northridge on the 28th. The sessions will go over the requirements and application process for CPA licensure, give an overview of resources available on the CBA website, and discuss the role of the CBA and value of earning a CPA license. Staff is actively coordinating more events and will be adding to the 2025 calendar soon, including the location of the September CBA meeting, which will be held on a college campus. It's going to be a busy year of outreach with the goal of making personal connections with as many consumers, applicants, and licensees as possible. Moving on to multimedia content, the latest video created by the CBA guides viewers through the process of applying for the CPA exam on the CPA website. This video provides a clear step-by-step visual guide to simplify the process and addresses common questions, and I would like to show it to you right now, if you would direct your attention to the monitor there.
So, you're ready to become a CPA. One of the first stops along your road to becoming a CPA is applying for and passing the CPA exam. In this video, we're going to walk you through exactly how to apply for the CPA exam on the California Board of Accountancy website. Don't worry, it's easier than you think. Let's get started. First, head to the CBA website at www.cba.ca.gov. See that top navigation bar? Click on the applicant's icon and you'll land on a page with some options. You will select, I am an exam candidate, because that's what you are. There is lots of good information on this page, including a quick tips document that breaks down a lot of what we're talking about in this video, information about sending in your transcripts, and so much more. We're going to click on Apply for the CPA exam, which will take you to the page where you will create your very own CBA client account. From this page, choose Establish Account, and then again on the following page. This is where your journey officially begins. Now, it's time to fill in some basic information: your name, date of birth, email address, and select a username for yourself. It's case sensitive, so keep that in mind and make sure you write it down somewhere so you don't forget. Hit Create Account and you're almost there. Check your inbox. You'll receive an email with a link to activate your account. Go ahead and follow that link, but this time, instead of Establish Account, click Log In. Enter the login information from your email, and you're in. Now you'll see tabs on your screen for contact info, additional info, and education info. Enter the information and make sure you say yes to question number 8 under additional info, which will allow you to receive your exam scores in your account. When you get to education info, you'll tell us whether you are an A, B, or C candidate. C is the early entry option, which you can read about more on our website. You'll check A if you've already earned your degree and completed the required 24 accounting and 24 business-related units. Or you'll check B if you're enrolled in a dual degree program where your master's and bachelor's degrees will be conferred once you're done. Once you've finished entering your information, click the Create Application tab to move on. Now it's time to fill out the remittance form, which is how you select your exam sections. You'll create this form the first time you apply, and in the future when you're ready to take or retake other sections of the exam. And it's the same process whether you're a first-time or repeat applicant. Just check which box applies to you. If you are transferring from another state, there's a separate box for you to check. Once you check yes under verification, then it's time to click Request New Remittance Form. You will need to print this form, sign it, and mail it to the CBA along with your application fee. Soon, you'll have the ability to do this online, But for now, we still need that paper copy mailed to us. And that's it. Once your application is approved by the CBA, your client account will update, letting you know you're ready for the next step of selecting your exam section. The exam section or sections that you select with each remittance form must be taken within a 9-month period. You can choose one section or more than one, and when you're ready for more sections, you just send us another remittance form and fee. You will receive your CPA exam scores right here in your client account too, once they're available. Now you're officially on the path to becoming a CPA. Congratulations! Now go crush that exam. You've got this. Remember, go to the website www.cba.ca.gov to create your account and for lots of great resources to help you on your journey. Good luck, future CPAs.
Right. Well, we're excited about that. Should be another great resource for our exam applicants. The CBA released the fall issue of Update number 103 the week after our last meeting. It was just before Thanksgiving. That edition was the first produced fully in-house by the outreach team. We're going to keep that up for issue 104, which is set to be published in early to mid-March. This issue will include an interview with CBA members Teresa Thompson, CPA, and Patricia Batchelor, CPA, discussing what it's like working at a large firm, in Ms. Thompson's case, versus a small firm, as Ms. Batchelor does. We'll also get to know both of them and their CPA stories a little more in the interview. Lastly, let's take a quick look at social media growth. In calendar year 2024, CBA platforms collectively gained an impressive 3,524 followers, which was a 26% increase. LinkedIn continues to have the fastest growth, and the CBA's Instagram is starting to show some traction thanks to an active mix of regular posts and stories. We even live streamed the outreach events at California State University San Marcos and UC San Diego Extended Studies in September on Instagram. We are exploring further innovative ways of engagement with an eye on hosting more live streams in 2025. Across LinkedIn, Facebook, X, and Instagram, the CBA is connecting with our community in real time, answering questions, sharing helpful resources, and supporting everyone from consumers and students to aspiring and current CPAs. That concludes my presentation on this agenda item. I'll turn it back now over to President Tu, who I will say did an excellent job. We recorded our podcast yesterday, so that will be coming soon next week. Good job, President. I'm happy to answer any questions.
That's only with a lot of help from you, Mr.
Only very minor editing will be needed, I promise.
But thank you for that report. Does anybody have any? Yes, Ms. Ward.
I want to say thank you so much. I want to ask a question for the February 21st outreach at Berkeley. I'm assuming open to all colleges and not just Berkeley, correct?
We'll be speaking about that, but they have been interested in doing that. So yeah, I don't know if they've officially reached out yet, but that is the plan.
Okay, because I didn't want to run back to work and tell the students, hey, go to Berkeley on this day. And they'd be like, no,
Yeah.
you're not invited. Okay. Thank
I have
you.
a follow-up conversation with her next week, so we're
Okay.
confirming that.
Just a quick question about social media. I know it's sort of like whack-a-mole because as soon as you saw one issue, then, or, as soon as you learn one platform, then another platform comes up as, sort of where people are trending.
Yeah.
Reddit, have we thought about creating a presence for ourselves on Reddit?
I like Reddit a lot. I suppose that hasn't been something that I've thought of before, but yeah, if you think it could be beneficial, yeah, I know there are certain groups that do,
Right.
like you say, have a presence on there.
Well, a lot of, my colleagues will use Reddit now more than really anything else. The first place you search
find answers
for information.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Just thought.
I will keep that in mind. Yeah.
Thank you. If I can remind all board member and speaker, make sure you bring your microphone closer to you so that we can all hear you. Any other? Yes, Mr. Aguilar.
Just wanted to compliment you and the team on the video we just watched. That's fantastic. That's kind of how I learn, in short bursts, and if you point me in the right way. That's a great way, a great resource. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for that.
Yes, I
Team
do
did a
love
great
the
job.
visual. The visual is very helpful.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, any comment from the audience in Sacramento? Any comments or questions from Ms. WebEx, Ms. Moderator?
Thank you. If anyone would like to make a comment on the outreach activity report, you can look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. Each speaker will have 5 minutes with a 30-second warning. Any comments on the report? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Moderator.
You're welcome.
Now we already did item number 6, so we're moving on to item number 7A, licensing activity report. It's Jennifer Hoppy who will be doing that report.
Thank you, President Tu. My name's Jennifer Huddy, and I'm the manager of the Initial Licensing Unit. This licensing activity report, or LAR, covers July 1st, 2024 through November 30th, 2024. The LAR begins with the reporting of processing times. I'm pleased to report that processing times remain below 30 days. The NASBA CPA exam performance summary for the third testing quarter of 2024 is attached. The number of first-time testers decreased by 31% for California and 19% nationally compared to the same period in 2023. A decrease in first-time testers is common after the implementation of a new exam version. The overall pass rates for California remain consistent to the national pass rates with a slight difference of 0.3%. Page 2 lists the inquiries received in the licensing division. The CBA obtained access to telephone statistics after this report was finalized. The licensing division received 11,648 telephone inquiries between July 1st, 2024 and November 30th, 2024, bringing the total number of inquiries to 40,340. On to pages 3 and 4. As of November 30th, 2024, the examination unit has approved over 1,900 first-time applicants to sit for the CPA exam. The initial licensing unit has approved 1,628 applications for new CPA and firm licenses. On pages 5 and 6, data related to renewal statistics, renewal deficiencies, and continuing education audits are displayed. As of November 30th, 2024, over 19,000 renewal applications were processed. And finally, Table 7 includes CE audit data. As of November 30th, 2024, the renewals unit had performed 375 audits. Of the 375, 281 were found to be compliant. 34 were initially deficient, but are now compliant. That concludes my presentation, and I will now turn it back over to President Tu. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that report. Any question or comment from the board members? Seeing none. Anyone from the Sacramento location? Seeing none. Ms. Moderator, can you open up WebEx for comment?
Certainly. If anyone would like to make a comment on the licensing report, you may click on the hand icon that you see at the bottom of your WebEx screen, or if you're a call-in user, you can press *3 to raise your hand. Are there any comments on the licensing report? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Moderator.
You're
welcome. Moving on to item number 8, A, Enforcement Activity Report, Ms. Corey Roden.
Thank you, President Tu. As everyone knows, my name is Corey Rudin. I'm the Deputy Chief of the Enforcement Division. The activity report before members today is for the first 5 months of fiscal year 2024-25. For complaints received, the CBA has received over 2,300 complaints. The graph on the bottom of page 1 provides a comparison of the total complaints received as of the same reporting period for the prior 2 fiscal years. On page 2, we have included information of the top 3 complaints, with complaints regarding unlicensed activity being the most common. Moving on to investigations and investigations pending on page 3. At the end of the first 5 months of the fiscal year, staff closed over 2,700 cases, with 98% closed within the first year. The average days to close investigations was 95 days, and enforcement had 1,401 cases in its pending investigations inventory. There are 2 cases pending over 24 months, and since the report, one has been closed and the other is still actively being investigated. For discipline-related information, which can be found on page 4 of the report, looking first at AG referrals, the CBA referred 18 matters to the AG and filed 20 pleadings. The CBA had 34 pending at the AG's office, and the CBA has taken action on 11 final disciplinary orders. Moving on to citations on page 5, the CBA has issued 745 citations. 93% of the citations were due to failing to comply with the 20 and 12 continuing education requirement. The CBA has received 38 citation and fine appeals, and we have withdrawn or modified 23 citations appeals, with most of these cases with the licensee either providing new mitigating evidence or they complied with the issue that resulted in the issuance of the citation. Page 6 contains information regarding unlicensed activity. The CBA has received just over 1,200 complaints regarding unlicensed activity. We've closed nearly 1,200 investigations in the first 5 months of the fiscal year. Final area of the report I'd like to highlight is on page 7 and is related to probation monitoring. As of November 30th, we had 59 licensees on probation, with 3 new probationers since the last report. We identified 10 probation violations, with the majority being failure to submit a written quarterly report. At this time, I'd like to turn the discussion of the item back over to President Tu, and would be happy to answer any questions members may have.
Thank you for that report. Any board member have any comments or questions? Seeing none. Anybody from Sacramento location? Seeing none. Ms. Moderator, please open up WebEx for comments.
Certainly. If anyone would like to make a comment on the enforcement report, you may look for the hand icon at the bottom of your WebEx screen or behind the 3-dot other options if you're on a mobile device. And our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. Are there any comments on the enforcement report? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Moderator.
You're welcome.
Moving on to item number 9 is the approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion to adopt the minutes of the November 21st to the 22nd, 2024 California Board of Accountancy meeting, specifically agenda item 9A, which include non-substantive edits that were noted after the material were received? Motion? Dr. Aguilar, you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I move to adopt the November 21st and 22nd meeting minutes.
Okay. Ms. Ward, thank you for the second. Any discussion from the board members? Seeing none. Anybody from Sacramento location? Seeing none. Ms. Moderator, can you open up WebEx for comments?
If anyone has a comment on the CBA meeting for November 21st, 22nd minutes, you may raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, and our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. Any comments on the first set of minutes? I do not see any comments. Shall I close that?
Yes, please. Thank you, Ms. Moderator. Now moving on, can I get a motion to accept Sorry, Miss, we need a vote. Miss Reed, could you take a roll?
All right, Evangeline Ward,
Yes.
Yin Tu,
Yes.
Joe Rosenbaum, Tony Lynn,
Yes.
Christian Lotta, she's not here. Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Same.
Nancy Dong,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Patricia Batchelor,
Yes.
and Doug Aguilera.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Miss Reed. Now I'm gonna would like to get a motion to accept the committee minutes, specifically agenda item 9D through 9F, which include non-substantive edits that were noted after the material were received. Do I have a motion? Miss,
I will move to accept the minutes in items 9B through F.
thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. Any discussion and or comment from the board member? Any comment or question from audience in Sacramento? Seeing none, Ms. Moderator, open up WebEx for comments.
If there are any comments on this new set of minutes, you may raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, and our call-in user may press *3 to raise their hand. Any comments on the minutes? I do not see any further requests for comment. Shall I close that?
Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
All right, we're moving on to the item number. Again, we need to vote on it.
Doug Aguilera,
Yes.
Patricia Batchelor,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Nancy Dong,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines, Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Tony Lynn,
Yes.
Joe Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Yin Tu, and Evangeline Ward.
Yes.
The motion carries.
All right, I'm getting ahead of myself. All right, now we can go to item number 10 and on other business. And the first item on A, and that's the report out for the American Institute of Certified Public Accountancy. Item, what is that? 1A. I need to take my glasses off when I read. Nancy Corrigan, you don't have any report?
No report at this
Okay, so we can actually move on to next item, which is item 10B, NASPA's report out. We have a report for item B1A, Enforcement Resource Committee. Mr. Aguilar?
Thank you, President Tu. So I attended my first Enforcement Resources Committee meeting, a little bit like a deer in the headlights. But I'll give you what I took out of it, or some of it. First of all, the Enforcement Resources Committee has a charge, and it's to promote effective, efficient, and where appropriate, uniform enforcement of professional standards by boards of accountancy. And there's 13 members of the committee, and 11 members were present on December 12th for our virtual meeting, which I thought was a good sign. And then I'll hit a couple of the topics. Well, first and foremost, Ms. Kerrigan left the committee in fine shape. It's just, yes. There was a discussion around the webinar training series and the desire to extend it into the future and possibly once a month, and to see if we could market the series as a potential CPE for some jurisdictions, as currently the majority of the attendees are board staff. So it would be nice if these webinars were also appealing to CPAs. The newsletter was another one of the discussion topics. And the discussion was around more frequent newsletters, thinking that they would be beneficial to board staff and board members, and that we reach out to board counsel and board executive directors to ask what topics they would like to hear about in the newsletter. And then possibly an article written by a legal defense firm that represents CPAs to hear from the other side of the professional licensing board disciplinary cases, which I thought was a good idea. And we all agreed that we would like to convene an in-person meeting, and so scheduling will take place for that. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Aguilar. Anybody have any questions for him? Seeing none, anybody from the segment? We don't need to. Okay, I will take all of these report after we have the report out with the public comments. Next item is B, 1B, and I believe Ms. Nancy Corrigan do not have any report as well for that one, or you do? Oh, Batchelor, Miss Batchelor, not Corrigan.
Thank you, President Tu. I actually don't have anything to report. Our meeting is scheduled for January 27th, which is after this meeting, for the Continual Professional Education Committee. We did have a kickoff meeting sometime in September just to introduce ourselves and different things like that, but we didn't have any topics that we discussed. So the January 27th meeting coming up, that's when we'll have I'll have more information for our next meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Batchelor. Same thing in Legislative Support Committee. Our committee met and did a lot of introduction, getting to know each other and all this stuff like that. And I think one of the discussion item was make sure we put in at NASPA's website, you can actually indicate who are some of the legislators you know well, so that when they have a need to call on your support and your help, they will know who to go to and so forth. We also discussed a in-person meeting, and that's staff at NASPA is going to work on the actual date. We're looking at sometime in April. The meeting in person is going to be in Nashville, their headquarter office. That is my report. And now we have, of course, Ms. Corrigan, Award Committee. Do you have anything to report?
The awards committee has yet to meet, so no report. Thank you.
All right, excellent. Now that that whole item is heard, anybody else have any comment or questions? Seeing none, public comment from Sacramento? Seeing none, Ms. Moderator, could you open up WebEx for comments?
Certainly. If anyone has a comment on any of the above reports, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, and our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. Are there any comments on any of the reports? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. We're going to pile on and not do an afternoon break. Item number 11, report on Committee on Professional Conduct, Legislative Committee and Enforcement Program Oversight Committee. Item A is the Committee on Professional Conduct. Mr. Aguilar.
Thank you, President Tu. The Committee on Professional Conduct discussed the two legislative proposals with staff seeking feedback and direction to inform future regulatory changes that will be necessary if the proposals become law. Up first was the open mobility legislative proposal that was approved at the September 2024 CBA meeting, allowing an out-of-state CPA whose license is current and active to provide public accountancy services in California under a no-notice practice privilege. If the bill is signed into law, the CBA will no longer recognize other states as being substantially equivalent with their licensure requirements. Instead, focusing on states' overall consumer protection protocols. Staff presented proposed amendments to repeal the California Code of Regulations provision regarding substantial equivalency. If a state is deemed as not meeting its consumer protection mission, CPAs from that state would still have an avenue to practice in California, but would be required to submit a specific practice privilege form before doing so. An amended draft of this form was also presented. The CPC discussed the open mobility proposal and encouraged staff to continue moving forward with the amendments as drafted. There's no action required on this item, but the CBA may wish to provide staff with additional feedback on the regulatory direction it's taking regarding open mobility. The next item that we discussed was the second proposal regarding the CPA licensure requirements. Again, staff was seeking direction to inform future regulatory changes that will be necessary if the CBA approved licensure legislative proposal becomes law. At the November 2024 CBA meeting, a legislative proposal was approved to introduce a more flexible pathway and increase accessibility to licensure. Since then, staff conducted focus group meetings with university faculty to discuss subject area definitions and minimum unit requirements for the accounting concentration. The results of these meetings were presented and discussed today. Staff recommends the subject area definitions as shown in attachment 4 and the following unit requirements to fulfill the accounting concentration. Accounting subject area to require a minimum of 24 units, business subject area to require a minimum of 24 units, and ethics subject area to require a minimum of 3 units. It was stated that the CBA members will need to be actively engaged and proactive as the legislative process moves forward. Executive Officer Franzella stated he will be working with leadership to designate 1 or 2 CBA members who may be called upon to meet with legislators and attend hearings. The CPC recommends that the CBA direct staff to move forward with the subject area definitions and minimum unit requirements as recommended by staff in the agenda item. This is a fully formed motion and a second is not needed. That concludes my report. I'll return it back to President Tu.
We have a motion on the floor. Any discussion or question by the board members? Mr. Jacobson.
Not sure to whom I'm asking this question, but there's in the materials mention that of substantial equivalency designation, and that we will no longer require states for the mobility issue to be designated as substantially equivalent. The question is, why would we no longer require that?
I see Ms. Sandra, did you or Mr. take a stab at it?
Sure. The removal of substantial equivalency was part of the legislative proposal that the board approved at its September and November meetings. So it is no longer a part of the mobility program. Instead, we replaced that with comparable licensure requirements and included that as part of looking at consumer protection.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments or question? We'll move on to Sacramento location. Any comments or questions? Seeing none. Ms. Moderator, please open up WebEx for comments.
This is the moderator. If anyone would like to make a comment on the committee report, you may look for the hand icon at the bottom of your WebEx screen and click that to raise your hand. If you're on a mobile device, that hand icon may be behind the three-dot other options, and our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. Any comments on the CPC committee report? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Thank you very much. And Ms. Reed, please call for a vote.
All right, Evangeline Ward,
Yes.
Yin Tu,
Yes.
Joe Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Tony Lynn,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
Nancy Dong,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Patricia Batchelor,
Yes.
and Doug Aguilera. The motion carries.
Ms. Reed. So we're moving on to 11B, Legislative Committee. Ms. Ward, would you like to report out?
Yes, thank you. This is from the meeting we had this morning. Item 11B1, staff provided a written report containing the final actions and outcomes on those bills on which the CBA had previously taken a position or monitored in 2024. The LC took no action on this item. Item 11B2, staff presented a review of the California legislative process and the CBA Legislative Committee's role. This presentation outlined the LC role in reviewing, recommending, and promoting legislation related to consumer protection and practice of accountancy, as well as the CBA staff role in supporting those activities. The LC took no action on this item. Item 11B3, Mr. Franzella presented an update on the progress staff is making in identifying an author for the CBA legislative proposals to enhance CPA licensing requirements and modernize mobility. He stated that staff has met with a handful of legislators, but an author has not been finalized at this point. Staff also met with Legislative Policy Committee staff in which the bill will be heard once introduced to address any questions they had. He thanked representatives of California Society of Certified Public Accountants for their involvement in this process. More information will be provided as it is available. The LC took no action on this item. Item 11B4, staff stated that this item intended to discuss a non-substantive statutory change to be included in the Senate committee bill no longer needs to be pursued due to the legislative action taken by the Senate Judiciary Committee. The LC took no action on this item. That concludes my report, and I hand it back to President Tu.
Thank you, Ms. Ward. Any comments or question from board member? Seeing none. Any comment or question from the audience in Sacramento? Seeing none. Ms. Moderator, please open up WebEx for comments.
Certainly. If anyone would like to make a comment on the Legislative Committee report or the motion, you may look for the hand icon. And if you are a call-in user, you may press *3 to raise your hand. Any comments on the Legislative Committee report? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. Thank you again, Ms. Moderator.
You're
All right, now we're moving on to item 12A. It is a agenda items for future California Board of Accountancy meetings. What? 12A done. We still have C1. So, all right. Thank you for your help, Dominic. C1. Ms. Dong still need to do her report.
Yes, thank you. I have the readout for EPOC. Staff presented an overview of how penalties for discipline are determined, including the imposition of administrative penalties. Following an overview of the factors and process used to determine disciplinary outcomes, staff presented data from the past 2 fiscal years showing outcomes for 3 major categories of disciplinary cases: the licensees affected and the range of administrative penalties imposed for each category. The committee has requested additional information on the assessed penalty amounts imposed by the SEC and PCAOB. The EPOC took no action on this item. And that concludes my report. I will now turn it back to President Tu for discussion on this item.
Thank you. Any question from the board members or comment? Seeing none, any comments from the Sacramento location audience? Seeing none, this moderator, please open up WebEx for comment.
Thank you. If anyone would like to make a comment on the EPOC summary and motion, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. And our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hands. Any comments on the committee report? I do not see any raised hands. If you'd like, I can close that item.
Yes. Thank you so much for your help. Now we can go to 12A, which is an item for future California Board of Accountancy meetings. Are there any agenda items from board members? Yes, Ms. Hine.
Hi, so I have a pretty broad invitation request to the board, to the president and the leadership, is for us to consider having some presentations and thinking about some topics and thinking about the future of using artificial intelligence in the accountancy profession. This is something that is happening, we're using in all of our different industries. And I think that it's important for us to be, ahead of thinking about how tools and resources that are currently available, are being used within the accountancy profession, for us as board members to have a collective understanding of how AI is being used in the profession, and also to have some discussions about responsibilities and ethics around using AI. Some of the things that I'm thinking about are how are students being taught to utilize AI as a resource and tool while they're in school, and how they're being taught to use it in the profession. Issues around ethics, disclosure to clients, the extent to which, practitioners need to disclose to clients the usage of AI. I don't have, like I said, specific ways in which we would bring it in, or whether this is something that could potentially be committed to the CPC, or whether we might invite NASBA or Cal CPA or some of our other partners. But I think it would be helpful for us to have some presentations about it, just so that we can know, like, what is the discussion around the use of AI in the accountancy profession? And then, are there any things that we should be thinking about, in terms of, guidance and regulations, as we're going forward. So.
And funny you should say that, because at yesterday's leadership meeting discussion with staff, that was one of the agenda item as well, and priority that we will be bringing back to the board this year. So we'll even note that there is more interest from board member than just the leadership group. Yes, Ms. Batchelor.
Yes, I brought this up before in past meetings, and what I wanted to do is applaud the CBA in terms of the Sure CPA Act. I think that's what it's called, Sure CPA Act, in terms of directing students on what they should actually do when they're on their path to being a CPA. And from talking to various young people, where it tanks in terms of getting to that final process is the experience area, the area of experience. And so I would like some further discussion in the near future on that area. Now, I do know that there's parts of the CBA cannot control external things like salary and how CPA firms conduct themselves and how they treat their employees. So I have an idea where students should be able to probably get their experience through education. We'll just use USC for an example. So that's a 4-year degree. And in the junior and senior year, I was thinking that it could be not an internship, but an externship, where they go out to the universities, from the university as part of a class, and they get their education and experience on site, because everyone doesn't have the same level playing field in terms of the area of experience. And so that's something that I would like, even if a team was created here within the CBA, I would like to be part of that team and having those type of conversations. Maybe invite some universities, we'll see USC, Berkeley, UCLA, to do different things like that. So for an example, with attorneys, there is a externship where they're out there working with judges, clerking, and different things like that. It may not be a paid position, which is fine for a lot of students because it's so difficult in that area of getting the experience. So that's something I would really, really like to consider with this board, because we're not wrapping our arms around the entire picture for students.
You know, Ms. Batchelor, I hear what you're saying. And I think yesterday with the leadership meeting, we were talking about certain things that we can wrap around from outreach activities, and we can build into it. I'm not sure exactly that going to be under our mission necessary. It's going to be very difficult. I'm going to let him address this, our executive officer. But I'm thinking our partners in Cal CBA, this area seems like where is your wheelhouse, I would imagine. And I would love for you to have the discussion with Ms. Batchelor's idea and see if that's something I can totally see the society to do something like that.
And just one
Madam-
more thing I'd like, I'm sorry.
And
Oh,
hold
I
on.
was just going to say, Madam President, we shouldn't get into a discussion about the item now.
That's
We can discuss whether it should be on the agenda or not.
Yeah.
I didn't
Okay.
mean to stop you. I was just, Madam President seemed to be asking for a discussion, and I wanted to make sure we didn't go that far.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So let's give direction to our staff that in the future, maybe we can bring this topic back, and then we can have a more robust discussion. How's that? Am I within the?
I'm done. Thank you. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Jacobson.
This is the closest agenda item that I can think of to say this, but I want to say that thank you to all of the board members with whom I've worked, past and present, and to the wonderful staff, past and present, and to the other folks who have contributed so much to the California Board of Accountancy, and I have had the great pleasure to witness that. Many of the discussions in which I have partaken have been spirited, but all have been on all sides civil, committed to doing the right thing, and very much contributed to the California Board of Accountancy, and thus to the California accountants and to California citizens. Again, I want to thank you very much. It has been my great honor to be a part of this board.
All right, I was going to do this right before closed session to thank you for your services since you make all these comments. I'm going to do it now. Probably on behalf of the board, we would like to thank you for your years of service on CPA and wish you the best.
Thank you.
All right, we still have public comment to request. So anybody from Sacramento would like to comment on this item? Seeing none, Ms. Moderator, can you open up WebEx for comments?
Certainly. If anyone would like to suggest a topic for a future board meeting, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or you may look for the, our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hands. Any suggestions on topics for future meetings? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. Thank you, Ms. Moderator.
You're welcome.
All right, now at this point, we will be moving into a closed session to deliberate on closed session matters. Once closed session is complete, CPA will be then adjourned. So we're moving on to closed session.